Welcome back to the channel, folks, where we dive into the wild, wonderful world of men transforming into women in all kinds of fascinating ways. If that's your vibe, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Now let's jump right into today's story. Chapter 1. Returning home. The bus ride back to my hometown was supposed to be peaceful, but my thoughts didn't give me a break. I slouched in the seat, watching the countryside roll by, the green hills and golden fields blurring together as the bus bumped along the old road. My headphones were snug in my ears, playing some indie music I didn't even really like. But it was better than sitting in awkward silence while my brain chewed over the past few months, gnawing on the same fears and uncertainties until the edges were frayed. I wasn't ready for this summer. Hell, I wasn't ready for anything. I glanced at my reflection in the window. A ghostly, distorted version of me staring back from the haze of the glass. The face that stared back looked wrong. It always had. My features were too soft, too delicate. My cheekbones were high, my chin narrow, and my eyes. People always said I had pretty eyes, which I hated. Guys weren't supposed to have pretty eyes. I tugged at the hood of my sweatshirt, pulling it tighter around my face as if that could hide the things I didn't want to see. My dark hair, which now brushed my shoulders, hung in an unkempt mess. I hadn't cared about it in months. I was 20 years old, but I didn't look it. I looked like an awkward teenager, still waiting for that sudden growth spurt that never came. I wasn't tall or broad like my brothers, or like the other guys I grew up with. I was 5'5", and if I weighed more than 100 pounds, it was a miracle. I looked like a gust of wind could knock me over, and I hated it. I tried to imagine myself back in high school, standing next to Jamie and the other guys on the football team. Back then, I convinced myself I was just a late bloomer, that eventually I'd catch up. But now? It was obvious that wasn't happening. I shifted in my seat, fidgeting with the frayed edge of my hoodie. The doctors had all said the same thing. There was nothing they could do. I wasn't built like other guys. My testosterone levels had never risen like they should have during puberty. My body had just stayed this way. Small. Raw. Big nantan. TD. I had tried working out once, thinking maybe I could at least build some muscle, bulk up a bit. But after months in the gym, I barely had anything to show for it. It was like my body just refused to cooperate, no matter how hard I pushed it. And now, things were getting even weirder. I tugged the hoodie down over my chest, feeling that same uncomfortable tightness. Lately, it felt like my body was doing its own thing without asking me first. My skin had started feeling softer, smoother, and my chest, my chest, was sore all the time. I had tried to ignore it at first, chalking it up to stress or something, but it was getting harder to pretend nothing was happening. My nipples were so sensitive that even brushing them against my shirt made me wince. And it wasn't just my chest. My hips had started filling out too, and my jeans were tighter in ways that were new and unsettling. I shifted again, trying to find a position that didn't make me hyper-aware of my body. But it was impossible. Everything felt wrong. My body felt alien to me, like it was betraying me in slow motion, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to clear the fog of anxiety that had settled over my brain. Maybe they were right, I thought bitterly. Maybe I should have been a girl. I shook my head immediately, rejecting the thought. What the hell was I even thinking? I wasn't a girl. I was just broken. That's what the doctors had said, right? Some kind of hormonal imbalance, something they couldn't fix with a pill or treatment. Still, the changes were happening, and I didn't know how to stop them. The bus bumped over a pothole, jolting me back to the present. I sighed and pulled out my phone to check the time. Only another half hour until we reached the station. I wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or terrified. My parents were picking me up, and I hadn't told them anything about what the doctors had said. I hadn't told anyone, really. What was I supposed to say? Hey Mom, Dad, guess what? I think I'm turning into a girl. Surprise. Nye. Yeah, that would go over well. I sighed and leaned my head against the window, watching the landscape blur by in shades of green and gold. The town I was returning to hadn't changed much since I left. Small, sleepy, and unchanging. The kind of place where everyone knew your business before you even had a chance to figure it out yourself. I wondered if anyone would notice the changes in me. Would they whisper? Would they stare? Would they even recognize me? By the time the bus pulled into the station, my nerves were shot. I shoved my phone into my pocket and grabbed my backpack from under the seat, slinging it over my shoulder as I stood up. My legs felt shaky, like they weren't quite mine. I paused for a second, taking a deep breath before stepping off the bus. The warm summer air hit me like a wall, thick and suffocating, making my hoodie feel even more oppressive than it already did. I tugged at the collar, trying to let some air in. Looking around, I spotted my parents almost immediately. They were standing by their old sedan, waving at me with the same enthusiastic energy that I'd had since I was a kid. My mom's face lit up the moment she saw me, but I caught the brief flicker of confusion in her eyes, the way her gaze lingered on me for a second too long. My dad gave me a quick wave before returning to loading my old duffel bag into the trunk. "There's my baby," Mom called out as she hurried over, wrapping me in a tight hug before I could even drop my backpack. I winced as my chest pressed against hers, the soreness flaring up again. God, I had forgotten how much of a hugger she was. "You've gotten so thin," she exclaimed, pulling back just enough to get a good look at me. Her hands were on my shoulders, then my arms, then my waist, like she was inspecting me for damage. "Are you eating enough? You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks." "Nah." "Here we go," I thought, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with school." I tugged the hoodie down over my chest again, trying to hide the changes I knew she'd notice if she looked too closely. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her smile faltering for just a moment. "Well, you're home now," she said, brushing some of my hair back from my face. "And you're going to rest. No more running yourself ragged. You need to eat and you need to relax." "Nee." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Okay." She gave me another squeeze before letting go. "Your dad's already got your bag in the car." She paused, her eyes flicking down to my chest for a split second before she caught herself and looked back up at my face. "Let's get you home." "Me." "Nah." Great, I thought, following her toward the car. She noticed. Of course she did. Moms always notice, even when you don't want them to. The drive home was filled with the usual small talk. Questions about school, how my finals went, if I was still hanging out with Jamie. I answered, as best I could, keeping my responses short and vague. I could feel my mom stealing glances at me in the rearview mirror, and even my dad seemed quieter than usual. He wasn't one to pry, but I could tell he was confused. They both were. I could feel the questions bubbling under the surface, but for now, they were holding back. I was grateful for that, even though I knew it wouldn't last. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I felt a wave of both relief and anxiety wash over me. The house looked exactly the same as it had the last time I was here. Small, cozy, with the front porch swaying gently in the breeze. It was the same house I had grown up in, but somehow, it felt different now. Or maybe it was just me. As I stepped out of the car, my mom was already bustling toward the house, calling over her shoulder, "I've got a roast in the oven. You're going to eat like a king tonight." "Down." I followed her inside, trying to ignore the way my clothes felt tighter and more uncomfortable with every step. My dad trailed behind us, giving me a brief pat on the back as we entered the house. The familiar smell of fresh baked bread hit me immediately. Mom was always baking something. It was comforting in a way, even though everything else felt so foreign. Dinner was awkward, to say the least. My parents tried to keep things light, asking about my classes, my friends, if I had any summer plans. But I could tell they were holding back, skirting around the elephant in the room. The fact that I looked different. The fact that I was different. My mom's eyes kept flicking to my chest, and my dad looked like he was trying to figure out if he should say something or just pretend nothing was happening. "So," my dad said suddenly, breaking the silence, "you still thinking about that summer job with Jamie's dad?" I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah. Maybe. I haven't really talked to Jamie about it yet." You know? My mom shot my dad a look like she was trying to tell him not to push, but he just shrugged. "Well, if you need some extra cash, it's not a bad gig, and it'll keep you busy." Thanks, Dad," I muttered, poking at my food. My appetite had vanished the moment I walked through the door, and now I was just trying to get through the meal without anyone asking the questions I wasn't ready to answer. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at myself. I had taken off my hoodie, and the t-shirt underneath clung to my body in ways it hadn't before. My chest was unmistakable now, two small but clearly defined mounds that pressed against the fabric. I ran my hand over them, wincing at the tenderness. What the hell was happening to me? I pulled my shirt up, exposing my stomach and chest. My skin looked smoother, almost glowing under the soft light. My waist had taken on a slight curve, and my hips, they were definitely wider. I turned to the side, looking at my reflection from different angles. My butt had filled out too, giving me a more rounded shape. I poked it experimentally, feeling the softness there. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. I was a guy, wasn't I? But as I stared at myself in the mirror, I couldn't shake the feeling that this body didn't belong to me anymore. Or maybe it never had. I lay in bed that night, staring up at the ceiling. My mind was racing, but at the same time I felt numb. I was scared. I didn't know what was happening to me, and I didn't know how to stop it. The doctors had said there was nothing they could do, but this was more than I had ever expected. My body was changing, and I didn't know if I could handle it. Chapter 2. The Stressful Day. It all started on a Tuesday. A perfectly ordinary, unremarkable day that managed to turn into a complete disaster by lunchtime. I was sitting in the back corner of the lecture hall, trying to pay attention to Professor Dalton's droning voice as he went on and on about some economic theory that I was pretty sure I was already failing to understand. His voice blended with the hum of the air conditioner and the soft rustling of papers from the 100 or so students scattered throughout the hall. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, adding to the dull, numbing atmosphere. I stared blankly at my notebook, which was mostly filled with half-hearted doodles and incomplete notes that made no sense out of context. I felt like I was treading water in an ocean of words I didn't understand. The words blurred together, becoming background noise as my mind wandered to more pressing concerns, like the fact that I had 2 midterms coming up, a paper due in a week, and a group project that naturally, my group had completely dumped on me. I was already drowning in work, and it felt like every time I tried to catch my breath, something else was thrown on top of me. I glanced at the clock. It was only 11:15. I still had another 45 minutes of this torture. My stomach twisted at the thought of what came next, meeting with my group for the project. Not that I was looking forward to that. They never actually did any work, and I was the one stuck picking up their slack. As usual, I slumped deeper in my seat, pulling the hood of my sweatshirt up over my head, trying to disappear into the fabric. I ran a hand through my hair, which was getting longer than I liked. I should have cut it weeks ago, but I'd been too busy. Or maybe just too tired. I hadn't been sleeping well lately. Every night I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't want to think about. It wasn't just the schoolwork piling up. It was everything. The way I felt out of place, like I didn't quite fit in anywhere. The way I avoided mirrors because I didn't like what I saw. The way my body felt like it wasn't listening to me anymore. I rubbed my chest absently, feeling the dull ache that had been there for a few days now. My nipples were sore, which was weird, but I figured it was just some random thing. Maybe I needed to cut back on caffeine or something. Who knew? Stress made your body do weird things, right? That's what I kept telling myself anyway. But the ache wasn't going away, and I was starting to get a little freaked out by it. Professor Dalton's voice crackled through the speakers, snapping me out of my thoughts. And that concludes today's lecture on supply-side economics. Don't forget we have the midterm next week. Make sure you're reviewing the study guide I posted online. You'll need to know the difference between demand pull and cost push inflation. I blinked, realizing I hadn't heard a single thing he'd said for the past hour. Great, just great. I packed up my notebook and shoved it into my backpack, feeling the weight of impending doom settle in my stomach. This midterm was going to kill me. And if it didn't, the group project would. The group meeting was just as awful as I had expected. We met in the library, in one of those small study rooms with walls that made you feel like you were trapped in a box. I sat down at the table hoping, praying, that maybe, just maybe, this time, I'd actually contribute something useful. But the second Sarah opened her mouth, I knew I was screwed. You don't mind finishing the report, right, Alex? She asked, flipping her hair over her shoulder without even looking at me. I'm just super swamped this weekend. Yeah, same, chimed in Derek, who hadn't said a word during the entire meeting, but somehow still managed to look annoyed. I've got a lot of other stuff going on. I stared at them, dumbfounded. You guys know this is due in 2 days, right? Sarah waved her hand dismissively. You're good at this stuff, though. You'll have it done in no time. I could feel my pulse rising, my chest tightening with frustration. This wasn't the first time they had dumped everything on me, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. But I was already drowning in my own work, and now they were asking me to rescue them too. Again, I can't do this all by myself, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel my hands trembling slightly. It's supposed to be a group project. You know, where everyone does part of the work, Derek shrugged. We're a group, and you're doing the project. Seems fair to me. I stared at him, incredulous. My mouth went dry, and I could feel the heat rising to my face. It wasn't fair, none of it was fair. But what was I supposed to do? Tell them no? Let the whole project tank and drag my grade down with it? I could already hear Professor Jenkins scolding me for not being a team player. It was a no-win situation, and they knew it. They knew I'd do the work, just like I always did. I bit back the urge to scream. Fine, I'll finish it. Sarah flashed me a bright, fake smile. You're the best, Alex. Seriously, we couldn't do this without you. Clearly, I muttered under my breath. As they packed up and left, I sat there staring at my laptop screen, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. It wasn't just this project. It wasn't just school. It was everything. The way I always felt like I was falling short. The way I never quite fit in. The way my body felt wrong. Like it was betraying me. Like it wasn't mine anymore. By the time I got back to my dorm room, it was late afternoon, and I felt like I had been hit by a truck. I threw my backpack onto the floor and collapsed onto my bed, staring up at the ceiling. My chest was still aching, and my shirt felt tight and uncomfortable against my skin. I tugged at it, pulling it up slightly, but the fabric still clung to my body in a way that made me feel suffocated. I frowned, rubbing my chest again. It wasn't just sore. It was tender, like the skin was stretched too tight. I sat up and pulled my shirt off completely, walking over to the mirror. I hadn't really been paying attention, but now that I was looking at myself, I could see that something was off. My chest wasn't just sore. It looked different. There was a slight puffiness around my nipples, like the skin was swelling. And my waist, was it slimmer than before? I turned to the side, and my eyes widened. My hips seemed wider. I felt a sudden pang of panic. This wasn't right. This wasn't normal. I grabbed my phone from the bed and typed swollen nipples male into the search bar. But the results didn't make me feel any better. Most of the articles were about hormone imbalances, puberty, or rare conditions that made men grow breasts. I swallowed hard, my palms starting to sweat. Maybe I'm just imagining it. Maybe it's stress. Stress could do weird things to your body, right? But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. My body was changing, and I didn't know why. The next couple of days were a blur of stress and exhaustion. I barely slept, trying to finish the group project on top of cramming for midterms. Every time I looked in the mirror, I noticed something new. My skin seemed softer, almost glowing, and my face, it was subtle. But my cheekbones looked more defined, my jawline softer. And my chest? God, my chest. The puffiness around my nipples had gotten worse. I had started wearing baggier shirts to hide it, but I couldn't ignore the way they were tender all the time, or the way my body seemed to be filling out in places it never had before. My hips were definitely wider, and my thighs seemed fuller. I tried to push it all to the back of my mind, telling myself it was just stress, that I was overreacting. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Then came the breaking point. It was the morning of my economics midterm, and I was already running on fumes by the time I got to class. I sat down at my desk, staring blankly at the exam in front of me. The words swam on the page, my brain refusing to focus. I had studied for this. I had spent hours going over the material. But now, all I could think about was the way my clothes felt too tight, the way my body was betraying me. I tried to concentrate, but my chest was throbbing again, and my mind kept drifting back to the mirror in my dorm room. I could still see it in my head, the way my reflection looked more feminine every day. I'd even caught myself sucking in my stomach when I passed by the mirror this morning, like I was trying to make my waist look smaller. What the hell was happening to me? I stared down at the exam, my heart racing. I couldn't do this. I couldn't concentrate. The panic was building, a tight ball in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I felt like I was about to explode. And then I did. I stood up abruptly, grabbing my bag and shoving my exam paper back at Professor Dalton. His eyebrows shot up in surprise as I mumbled something about not feeling well and bolted out of the classroom. My vision blurred as I made my way down the hall, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I was outside, gulping in fresh air like I'd been suffocating. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to steady myself, but the world was spinning around me. My clothes felt too tight, my skin tingling with discomfort, and my chest was throbbing. I could feel the weight of it, like something was pressing down on me, changing me, reshaping me into something I didn't recognize. I couldn't do this. I didn't keep pretending everything was normal. My body was changing, and I had no idea why. I spent the rest of the day hiding in my room, avoiding everyone. I couldn't face my friends. I couldn't face my professors. I couldn't even face myself. I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind racing in 1,000 different directions. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my reflection in the mirror. The way my body was shifting, becoming softer, rounder, more feminine. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop it. I sat in the waiting room, my leg bouncing nervously as I flipped through a magazine I had no interest in. The pages were glossy and full of happy, airbrushed faces. But all I could think about was the dull, persistent throbbing in my chest. It had been a few days since I'd freaked out and bolted from my economics midterm. Since then, the changes in my body had only become more noticeable. My chest was more tender, and every time my shirt brushed against it, I winced. My hips had started to feel different too, like they were somehow heavier, rounder. I was constantly tired, my appetite had dropped off, and worst of all, I had no idea what the hell was causing all of this. The door to the exam room opened with a soft creak, and a nurse called my name. I stood up, my stomach doing somersaults as I followed her into the back, where the sterile smell of antiseptic stung my nostrils. The nurse led me into a small room and handed me a paper gown. "Go ahead and change into this," she said with a warm smile. "The doctor will be with you shortly." I nodded, clutching the flimsy gown in my hands as she left the room. I let out a shaky breath and glanced at myself in the mirror. My reflection stared back at me, pale and tired-looking. My hair was a mess, and my hoodie hung loosely over my small frame. I peeled it off, tugging at the fabric as it brushed against my chest, sending another sharp jolt of pain through me. I hesitated for a moment, then pulled my t-shirt over my head and tossed it onto the chair. In the harsh fluorescent light, the changes to my body were even more obvious. My nipples were swollen, and there was a definite puffiness around them, like small mounds of breast tissue were starting to form. I frowned, running a hand over the area, wincing at how tender it felt. I turned slightly, examining my profile in the mirror. My hips had definitely widened. They weren't huge or anything, but there was a noticeable curve that hadn't been there before, and my butt, yeah, that was definitely bigger too. I shifted uncomfortably, the paper gown rustling as I put it on. The fabric clung awkwardly to my body, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. A soft knock at the door startled me, and I jumped slightly as the doctor walked in. Dr. Simone was a middle-aged woman with short, curly hair and a calm, professional demeanor. She smiled kindly at me as she sat down at her desk, flipping through some papers on her clipboard. "Hi, Alex," she said, her voice gentle. "I see you're here today because of some concerns about changes to your body." I swallowed, my throat dry. "Yeah. My chest has been really sore, and I've noticed changes, like my hips and my weight. It's just weird." She nodded thoughtfully, jotting something down on her clipboard. "All right. Well, let's take a look." I sat on the exam table as she carefully examined my chest, her fingers gently pressing against the swollen tissue. I winced as she touched the tender spots, and she gave me an apologetic smile. "I know it's uncomfortable," she said, stepping back after a few minutes. "But based on what I'm seeing, it looks like your body is developing breast tissue. Have you noticed any other changes? Fatigue, mood swings, changes in appetite?" I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yeah, all of that. I've been super tired lately, and I haven't really felt like eating." She scribbled a few more notes, her brow furrowing slightly. "All right. I think we're going to need to run some blood tests to get a better understanding of what's going on. But based on the physical symptoms you're describing, it sounds like your body is responding to a significant hormonal shift." "Hormonal shift?" I echoed, my voice cracking slightly. "But why? I'm a guy. Why would I be developing breast tissue?" Dr. Simone sighed softly and set her clipboard down. It's not entirely uncommon for men to experience some degree of gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue due to a hormonal imbalance. However, in your case, based on the other changes you've mentioned, like the widening of your hips, it's possible that your body is producing more estrogen than it should be. I stared at her, my mind spinning. Estrogen, but why? I'm not supposed to have estrogen. Well, everyone has some level of both estrogen and testosterone, she explained, her voice calm and reassuring. But in your case, it seems like your body is producing an unusually high amount of estrogen. Stress can sometimes trigger hormonal imbalances, and I understand you've had a pretty overwhelming semester. I nodded numbly, my hands gripping the edge of the exam table. Yeah, but this isn't normal, right? I mean, I've always been small, but this feels like, I don't know, like I'm changing into. I trailed off, the words sticking in my throat. I couldn't even bring myself to say it. Dr. Simone gave me a sympathetic look. I know this is overwhelming, but we need to figure out exactly what's going on before we jump to any conclusions. I'm going to order a full panel of blood tests so we can get a clear picture of what your hormone levels look like. I nodded, still in shock. My mind was swirling with questions, but none of them made any sense. Why was this happening to me? Why now? And what did it mean? A few days later, I found myself back in Dr. Simone's office, sitting anxiously while she reviewed the results of my blood tests. She cleared her throat and looked up at me, her expression serious but compassionate. Alex, I've gone over your test results, and it appears that your body is producing extremely high levels of estrogen, levels that are consistent with someone going through female puberty. My stomach dropped. Female puberty, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. But how? I'm not. I mean, I'm a guy. Dr. Simone nodded. I understand this is confusing, but based on your test results, it seems like your body is finally going through puberty. But for some reason it's following a female pattern. This could be due to a number of factors, including genetic or hormonal abnormalities that we may not have detected earlier in your life. But I didn't go through male puberty before, I said, my voice trembling. I mean, not really. I never grew or developed like other guys. The doctors always said I was just a late bloomer, but nothing ever happened. Dr. Simone leaned forward, her eyes filled with understanding. That's exactly it, Alex. It seems that your body never fully went through puberty when you were younger. In fact, it appears that some essential changes didn't happen at all. Your bones, muscles, and other tissues haven't fully matured yet, which might explain the fatigue and other symptoms you've been experiencing. I stared at her, trying to wrap my head around what she was saying. So, what does that mean? My body just stopped developing. She nodded. Yes, it's possible that the hormonal signals your body needed to trigger puberty either didn't happen or were incredibly delayed. Essentially, your body is now catching up, but instead of following the typical male path, it's following a female one. And a chance says you. This could be due to a genetic predisposition, or an underlying hormonal imbalance that wasn't detected earlier in your life. I swallowed hard. But why is this happening now? Why not when I was supposed to go through puberty in high school? Dr. Simone sighed softly. That's one of the mysteries of human development. Sometimes hormonal shifts can be delayed by factors we don't fully understand. Stress, for example, can trigger or exacerbate existing imbalances. What's important now is that your body is finally going through puberty, but it's following a female pattern due to the high levels of estrogen in your system. My mind was spinning. But what does that mean for me? What's going to happen? Dr. Simone took a deep breath, her tone gentle but firm. Your body will likely continue to change. You'll probably notice more breast development, your hips will likely widen further, and your fat distribution will continue to shift in ways that are more typical of female puberty. Your skin might soften, and you might experience more emotional changes as well. These are all typical effects of high estrogen levels. I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. But can't we stop it? Can't you give me something to, I don't know, fix this? She shook her head slowly, her expression somber. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Your body is going through a crucial developmental process that it missed during your adolescence. If we try to stop it now, there's a significant risk that your body won't fully develop, which could lead to long-term health issues. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What do you mean? Long-term health issues? Dr. Simone's expression softened. Your bones, muscles, and other tissues are still maturing. If we interrupt this process now, by trying to artificially lower your estrogen levels or increase testosterone, we could cause problems with your bone density, muscle mass, and even your cardiovascular health. Your body needs to finish developing, and right now, this is the only way that process is happening. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. My body was going through female puberty. I was turning into, what? A girl. So, I just have to let this happen, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Simone nodded. I know it's a lot to take in, and I'm not saying this is going to be easy. But right now, the safest thing for your health is to allow your body to finish this process. I recommend you take some time to process everything, and it might be helpful to talk to a counselor who specializes in gender and hormonal issues. This isn't something you have to go through alone. I nodded numbly, my mind spinning. I felt like I was in a nightmare, like any minute I would wake up, and all of this would have been some terrible dream. But I knew, deep down, that this was real. My body was changing, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The walk back to my dorm was a blur. I barely registered the people passing by, or the campus buildings I'd walked by 100 times before. All I could think about was what Dr. Simone had said. My body was going through female puberty. I was turning into something else. Someone else. I felt nauseous. My chest ached, my hips felt heavy, and my mind was racing with thoughts I couldn't control. What was I going to tell my parents? My friends? How was I supposed to explain that my body was changing in ways I didn't understand? In ways that didn't make sense? When I finally made it back to my dorm room, I collapsed onto my bed and stared up at the ceiling, my mind blank. I felt like I was floating outside of my own body, like I was watching all of this happen to someone else. But it wasn't someone else. It was me. I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen next, or how I was supposed to deal with this. But I knew one thing for sure. My life was never going to be the same again. Later that night, I got a message from my mom. It was just a simple text. We can't wait to see you this summer. Love you, sweetheart. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to tell her everything, to spill all my fear and confusion and ask her what I should do. But another part of me couldn't bring myself to say it. Not yet. Not when I didn't even understand what was happening. Instead, I typed back a short reply. Love you too, Mom. See you soon. I set my phone down, the weight of everything pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. Summer was coming. And with it, the questions I wasn't ready to answer. The bus ride home felt like a lifetime. I sat by the window, watching the suburbs blur past, my stomach tying itself into knots with every mile that brought me closer to my parents' house. It wasn't that I didn't want to see them, I did. But I wasn't ready for them to see me. I tugged at the hem of my hoodie, trying to make it sit looser around my chest. It had become my go-to outfit lately. Oversized hoodie, baggy jeans. Anything to hide what was happening to my body. But even all the layers couldn't disguise the fact that things were different. My chest was definitely bigger. Not huge, but enough that I could feel the slight weight of it when I moved. My hips had filled out too, giving me a curvier shape that was harder to ignore every time I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My skin was softer. My waist seemed to be cinching in. And my hair, God, my hair, was growing faster than it ever had. It was already brushing my shoulders. I hadn't told my parents what was going on. I mean, how could I? Hey Mom, Dad, guess what? I'm going through female puberty. Yeah, that wasn't exactly a conversation I was eager to have over the phone. I figured I'd deal with it when I got home. One thing at a time, right? The bus pulled into the small station in my hometown, and I could already see my mom's car parked nearby. I grabbed my backpack and slung it over my shoulder, taking a deep breath as I stepped off the bus. The warm summer air hit me like a wave, and I tugged at my hoodie again, feeling a bead of sweat trickle down my back. I knew I'd have to ditch the hoodie soon. It was way too hot for this kind of weather. But I wasn't ready to give up my security blanket just yet. I spotted my mom waving from across the parking lot, her usual bright smile plastered on her face. She was wearing one of her typical flowery sundresses, her blonde hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. My dad was standing next to her, looking a little less enthusiastic but still happy to see me. He was never one for big emotions, but I could tell he was glad I was home. "Alex," my mom called, rushing over to me with her arms outstretched. I braced myself for the inevitable bear hug, and sure enough, she wrapped me up in her arms, squeezing me tight. "Oh, honey, it's so good to have you home." "Hey, Mom," I mumbled into her shoulder, patting her back awkwardly. My chest pressed against hers and I winced at the soreness. It was a weird reminder of how different things felt now. She pulled back and held me at our arm's length, her eyes scanning me up and down. Her smile faltered for just a second, and I could see the gears turning in her head. She noticed something. Of course she did. She was my mom. "You've slimmed down," she said, her tone casual but with a hint of concern. "Are you eating enough? You look like you've lost weight." I forced a smile, trying to keep my voice light. "Yeah, I'm fine. It's just been a stressful semester, you know." She frowned slightly, but she didn't push it. "Not yet, anyway." "All right, well, your dad and I have been baking up a storm, so we'll make sure you're well fed this summer," she said with a wink. "Oh, great," I replied, laughing nervously. Nothing like a little carbs to solve all my problems. My dad stepped forward then, giving me a quick, awkward hug. "Good to see you, kiddo," he said, his voice gruff but affectionate. He pulled back and gave me a once-over, his brow furrowing slightly. "You look different." I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. "Yeah, I guess." He didn't say anything more, just nodded and grabbed my backpack for me, tossing it into the trunk of the car. I could feel my mom's eyes on me the whole time, like she was trying to piece together what was off. I knew it wouldn't be long before she asked the questions I didn't want to answer. The car ride home was quiet, but not the comfortable kind of quiet. I stared out the window, watching the familiar streets of my hometown roll by. It was like nothing had changed here. Same old houses, same old shops, same old everything. But I had changed, and I wasn't sure how to deal with that. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt a weird mix of relief and anxiety. It was good to be home, but at the same time, I knew that being home meant facing things I wasn't ready to face. My mom was already out of the car, practically bouncing on her heels as she waited for me to grab my stuff. "We've got your room all set up," she said, her voice chipper. "I thought maybe we could have a movie night tonight. Just the three of us. I even got your favorite snacks?" I smiled. Genuinely, this time. "That sounds great, Mom." As we headed inside, I couldn't help but notice how my hips swayed slightly with each step. It was a subtle thing, but it felt so different. My jeans were tighter than they used to be, clinging to curves that hadn't been there before. I tugged at the waistband, trying to adjust them, but it was no use. This was my new reality. My mom led the way into the kitchen, where the smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air. My dad wandered off to the living room, muttering something about checking the score of the game, and I was left alone with my mom. She busied herself at the counter, arranging a plate of cookies, and talking about all the things she wanted to do this summer. Trips to the farmer's market, family barbecues, maybe even a weekend at the lake. I nodded along, but I wasn't really listening. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how I was going to tell her what was happening to me. Finally, she turned around, wiping her hands on a towel, and looked at me with that classic mom expression, the one that said, "I know something's up, and you better tell me what it is." "Alex," she said gently, her voice soft. "Are you okay? You seem off." I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired, I guess." She gave me a look, the kind that said she wasn't buying it. "Honey, I know when something's bothering you. You've always been a little smaller than the other boys. But this is different. You've lost weight. Your face looks softer." She trailed off, her eyes narrowing slightly as she studied me. "Is something else going on?" Well, I felt a lump forming in my throat, and I looked down at the floor, my hands fidgeting in my lap. I couldn't keep lying to her. She deserved to know the truth. "Mom," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you." She set the towel down and came over to sit beside me at the kitchen table, her hand gently resting on my arm. "You can tell me anything, sweetheart. You know that." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I went to the doctor a few weeks ago. I've been noticing some changes. My chest was really sore, and my hips, and I thought maybe it was just stress, but oh. I trailed off, my voice breaking slightly. "The doctor did some tests, and she said I'm going through female puberty." My mom blinked, her face still, but then her expression softened in a way that only a mother's could. "Female puberty?" she repeated, her voice careful and measured. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. She said my body never fully went through puberty when I was younger, and now, for some reason, it's happening. But instead of producing testosterone, my body is making estrogen. And it's changing me. For a moment, there was silence. My skin prickled with the weight of the confession, and I braced myself for what she might say. But instead of shock or confusion, my mom simply took my hand in hers and squeezed it gently. "Oh, Alex," she said softly, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone." I blinked, thrown off by her reaction. "You're not freaked out." She shook her head, wiping at her eyes with a small laugh. "Sweetheart, I'm your mother. I love you no matter what. You're still my child, whether you're going through male puberty or female puberty or whatever else happens. That doesn't change." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but at the same time, there was still this nagging fear in the back of my mind. But what if I keep changing? What if I don't look like me anymore? My mom smiled, brushing a strand of hair out of my face. "You'll always be you, Alex. And if your body changes, we'll figure it out together. Besides," she hesitated for a moment, her smile turning a little mischievous, "I've always secretly wanted a daughter, you know." I blinked in surprise, my mouth dropping open slightly. "Wait, what?" She laughed, giving my hand another squeeze. I mean, I love you just the way you are. But I can't lie. There's a part of me that's always dreamed about having someone to do girly things with. You know, shopping trips, spa days, maybe even mani-pedis. She winked at me, and I couldn't help but laugh. Mom, I don't think I'm ready for a mani-pedi just yet, I said, shaking my head. Well, the offer's on the table, she said with a grin. And if you ever feel like trying on a cute sundress, I won't stop you. I groaned, but there was a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? She laughed, but then her expression grew serious again. Alex, I know this is a lot to process, and I'm sure you're feeling scared and confused right now. But I want you to know that your dad and I are here for you. Whatever happens, we'll support you. You don't have to go through this alone. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, and I quickly wiped them away, not wanting to break down completely. Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. She hugged me again, and this time I didn't wince. I let myself sink into the warmth of her embrace, feeling a strange sense of comfort in the midst of all the chaos. Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, my dad finally spoke up. So, your mother tells me you've been going through some changes, he said, his voice gruff, but not unkind. He glanced at my mom, who gave him a reassuring nod. I nodded, my hands fidgeting in my lap. Well, yeah. It's been a weird couple of months. He was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully on his food. Then he set his fork down and looked at me. Well, you've always been a tough kid. If anyone can handle this, it's you. I blinked, surprised by his words. My dad wasn't exactly the kind of guy who gave out compliments easily, but there was an earnestness in his tone that told me he meant it. Thanks, Dad, I said, my voice soft. He nodded, picking up his fork again. Just let us know if you need anything. We're here for you. I smiled, feeling a little more at ease. Maybe this summer wouldn't be so bad after all. My parents were on my side, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel so alone. As the conversation shifted to lighter topics, my mom's plans for a summer garden, my dad's latest DIY project, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of hope. Sure, my body was changing in ways I didn't understand, and the future was still a big, scary question mark. But for now, I was home. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My chest was still tender, and the small mounds of tissue were more noticeable. My hips were definitely wider, and my waist seemed to be cinching in more every day. My hair was longer, softer, and my face was changing too. My cheekbones were more pronounced, my jawline softer. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the smoothness of my skin, the unfamiliar contours of my body. It was still me, but it wasn't. Not completely. And yet, as I stood there, I couldn't help but hear my mom's words echoing in my mind. You'll always be you. Maybe she was right. Maybe, no matter how much my body changed, I was still Alex. I was still me. I wasn't sure where this journey was going to take me, but at least now I knew I didn't have to walk it alone. With a deep breath, I turned off the light and headed to bed, feeling a little more ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 5. Meeting Old Friends. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made my heart skip a beat. I hadn't seen Jamie in months, maybe longer. We'd kept in touch through text and the occasional video game session, but this was the first time we'd be hanging out since everything started changing. I stood in front of the hallway mirror, fidgeting with the hem of my t-shirt. My reflection stared back at me, unfamiliar yet familiar at the same time. My hair was longer now, brushing against my shoulders in soft waves. My face had softened, my jawline less sharp than it used to be, and my cheekbones more prominent. My chest, still small but undeniably swollen, pressed against the fabric of my shirt in a way that made me hyper-aware of every movement. And my hips, they had definitely widened. No matter how much I tried to ignore it, my body was undeniably different. I tugged at my jeans, trying to make them sit looser on my hips. These were the baggiest pair I owned, but even they clung, in strange places now. My waist had cinched in slightly, giving me a subtle hourglass shape that I couldn't hide, no matter how hard I tried. "It's fine," I told myself, taking a deep breath. "Jamie's not going to care. He's your best friend. He'll treat you the same way he always has." But deep down I wasn't so sure. The doorbell rang, and I jumped, my heart pounding in my chest. I quickly ran a hand through my hair, trying to smooth it down before heading to the door. My palms were sweaty, and I wiped them on my jeans before reaching for the doorknob. When I opened the door, there he was, Jamie. Tall, athletic, and as effortlessly cool as ever. His dark hair was tousled in that way that looked like he'd just rolled out of bed. But I knew he probably spent a good 10 minutes getting it to look that way. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, but somehow they looked like they belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. His broad shoulders and muscular arms were on full display, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of something as I looked at him. "Alex," Jamie grinned, stepping forward and pulling me into a hug before I had a chance to react. I tensed for a moment, my chest pressing awkwardly against his, the warmth of his body making my skin tingle in a way that was both uncomfortable and something else. I wasn't sure what it was, but it sent a flutter of confusion through my stomach. "Hey, Jamie," I mumbled, trying to hide my awkwardness as I patted his back lightly. When he finally pulled away, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Jamie stepped back, giving me a once-over. His gaze lingered on me for a second longer than usual, but he didn't say anything. If he noticed the changes, he wasn't letting on. "You look good, man," he said, flashing me that easygoing smile that always seemed to make everything feel normal. "It's been too long." I forced a smile in return, trying to shove down the anxiety bubbling up inside me. "Yeah, it has. You look the same." He laughed, a deep, warm sound that made my stomach flip. What can I say? I guess I peaked early. No kidding, I thought, glancing at his biceps, which were practically bulging out of his sleeves. I quickly looked away, feeling a blush creep up my neck. What the hell is wrong with me? "Come on in," I said, stepping aside to let him into the house. "Mom's making cookies, so we'll probably be ambushed with a plate of them any minute now." Jamie grinned. "Sweet. You know I can never say no to your mom's cookies." As he walked past me, I couldn't help but notice how much taller he seemed. He'd always been taller than me. But now, with my smaller frame, the difference felt more pronounced. He was so solid. I felt oddly fragile in comparison, like I might break if I bumped into him too hard. It was a strange, unsettling feeling, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. We headed into the living room, where Jamie flopped down onto the couch like he owned the place. I sat down more carefully, tucking my legs under me and trying not to think about how weird the fabric felt against my newly sensitive skin. Everything felt more intense lately, like my body was hyper-aware of every sensation. It was exhausting, honestly. "So," Jamie said, stretching his arms behind his head in that annoyingly casual way he had. "What's new with you? How's it feel to be back home?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. Same old, same old. You know how it is." He raised an eyebrow. "Come on, man. You've been Mia for months. What have you been up to? I need details. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. What was I supposed to tell him? Oh, nothing much. Just slowly turning into a girl. Yeah, that wasn't happening. But I couldn't exactly lie to him either. Jamie knew me too well. He'd pick up on it in a second. I've just been dealing with some stuff, I said vaguely, hoping he wouldn't push it. To my relief, Jamie didn't press. He just nodded, his expression growing more serious. Yeah, I get that. College can be a bitch sometimes. I laughed, though it was more out of nerves than anything. Yeah, you could say that. There was a brief silence and I could feel Jamie's eyes on me, like he was trying to figure something out. I shifted uncomfortably, tugging at the hem of my shirt again. My chest felt tight, and I was hyper-aware of the way my body seemed to be fitting into this new, softer shape. I crossed my arms over my chest, hoping to hide the slight swell that had been forming there. So, Jamie said after a moment, his tone lighter. You still suck at video games? Or have you actually gotten any better since the last time we played? I snorted, grateful for the change in subject. Please. I could totally kick your ass now. He laughed, that big booming laugh that always seemed to fill up the room. Oh really? Let's see it then. I brought my controller, just in case you wanted to lose. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help but smile. Fine, die. But don't cry when I destroy you. We spent the next hour playing video games just like we used to. And for a little while, it felt normal. Jamie didn't treat me any differently. He still made dumb jokes and teased me mercilessly whenever I messed up. It was just like old times, and I found myself relaxing, even if only a little. But every now and then, I'd catch myself staring at him. His strong jawline, the way his muscles flexed when he moved, the easy confidence in the way he carried himself. There was something about it that made my stomach twist in a way that I didn't understand. I'd never felt like this before, not about Jamie, not about anyone. It was confusing and unsettling, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. At one point, Jamie leaned back, stretching his long legs out in front of him, and I caught a whiff of his cologne. Something woodsy, like cedar or pine. It was subtle, but it sent a shiver down my spine, and I quickly looked away, my face burning. What the hell is happening to me? After a while, we took a break from the games and headed into the kitchen, where my mom had indeed left a plate of freshly baked cookies on the counter. Your mom's the best, Jamie said through a mouthful of cookie. I laughed, grabbing one for myself. Yeah, she's pretty great. We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, munching on cookies, and I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of contentment. Despite everything that was going on with me, this being here with Jamie, eating cookies in my kitchen, felt like home. It felt normal. But then, out of nowhere, Jamie glanced at me and said, "You've changed, you know." My heart skipped a beat and I nearly choked on my cookie. What? He shrugged, his expression casual. I don't know. You just seem different. Not in a bad way, though. Just different. I swallowed hard, my palms suddenly sweaty. Different how? Jamie was quiet for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly as he thought. I don't know. You seem quieter, I guess. More? I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just 'cause we haven't hung out in a while. I forced a laugh, though it sounded hollow even to my own ears. Yeah, maybe. It's been a weird few months. He nodded, taking another bite of his cookie. Well, whatever it is, I'm glad we're hanging out again. I missed you, man. My stomach flipped again, and I quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in the cookie crumbs on the counter. Yeah, I missed you too. There was another brief silence, and I could feel the weight of Jamie's gaze on me. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was noticing more than he was letting on. We moved back to the living room, but things felt different now. I was hyper-aware of every movement, every glance. My body felt strange in ways I couldn't explain, like my skin was too sensitive, my clothes too tight. Sitting next to Jamie, I felt small and delicate, and it was both unsettling and exciting. Was that the right word? I wasn't sure. As we sat there, chatting about nothing in particular, I couldn't help but steal glances at him. His broad shoulders, the way his biceps flexed when he shifted positions, the line of his jaw as he smiled. There was something about him that made my heart race, something that made me feel different, and it scared me. I'd never thought about Jamie this way before. He was my best friend. That's all he'd ever been. But now, I wasn't so sure. I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Later, when Jamie finally left, I collapsed onto my bed, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of the day. My mind was spinning, replaying every moment, every look, every word. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Jamie had smiled at me, the way his voice had sounded when he said he'd missed me. It was all so confusing, so overwhelming. I rolled over, staring up at the ceiling, my chest tight with emotions I didn't understand. Was this just a side effect of the changes my body was going through? Or was it something more? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that, for the first time in my life, I felt something for Jamie that wasn't just friendship, and I wasn't sure what to do with that. What's happening to me? I closed my eyes, my heart still racing, and tried to push the thoughts away. But they wouldn't leave me alone. And deep down, I knew that things between me and Jamie were never going to be the same again. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of unease that hadn't been there before. The butterflies in my stomach from the day before were still fluttering, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. I didn't know what was happening to me, or why I was suddenly feeling things for my best friend that I'd never felt before. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. Chapter 6. Confessions. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the backyard. Jamie and I were sprawled out on the old wooden deck behind my parents' house, a couple of half-empty soda cans between us. It had been an unseasonably warm evening for spring, and the heat clung to the air like a blanket, making everything feel a little heavier, a little more intense. We'd spent most of the day together, just like we used to when we were kids. Playing video games, riding bikes through the neighborhood, talking about nothing and everything. But as the day wore on, the things I hadn't said started to weigh on me. The things I needed to tell him. I could feel it building up inside me, like a balloon that was about to burst. I'd been putting it off for days now, telling myself that I didn't need to tell Jamie, that it wasn't his business, or that maybe he'd notice on his own, and we wouldn't have to have the conversation. But the truth was, I was scared. Scared of what he would think. Scared of how he might react. And if I was being honest with myself, scared of what I was feeling. Because lately being around Jamie wasn't the same as it used to be. I glanced over at him, watching as he leaned back on his hands, his head tilted up toward the sky, the fading sunlight casting shadows across his strong jawline. He looked so calm, so completely unaffected by everything. Meanwhile, I felt like I was falling apart, my body transforming in ways I didn't understand, my emotions shifting like quicksand beneath me. I need to tell him. The thought hit me hard, like a train barreling down the tracks. I had to get it out. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was normal, like I wasn't going through something huge, something that was changing me in ways I couldn't hide anymore. Jamie, I said, my voice quieter than I'd intended. He turned his head to look at me, one eyebrow raised. Yeah. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. There's something I need to tell you. He sat up a little straighter, his expression turning serious. Okay, what's up? For a moment, I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat, tangled up with all the fear and anxiety I'd been carrying around for weeks. I could feel my pulse racing, my palms sweating. What if he didn't take it well? What if he looked at me differently after this? What if I lost him? Just say it. I've been changing, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. Like physically. Jamie frowned, his brow creasing in concern. What do you mean, changing? Are you sick or something? No, it's not. I'm not sick, I said quickly. It's more like puberty, but not the kind I was supposed to go through. He stared at me, clearly confused. What are you talking about, Alex? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I went to the doctor a few weeks ago because I'd been noticing some stuff. My chest was sore, and my hips were getting wider, and I thought maybe something was wrong, but it turns out. I trailed off, my throat tightening. It turns out I'm going through female puberty. Jamie blinked, his confusion deepening. Wait. What? I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep going. The doctor said my body never went through male puberty like it was supposed to. Something about hormones not doing their job. And now, for some reason, my body's producing estrogen instead of testosterone, and it's changing me. I could see the wheels turning in Jamie's head as he tried to process what I was saying. His eyes flicked down to my chest, where the outline of my small but noticeable breasts was visible through my t-shirt, then back up to my face. So, you're turning into a girl? He asked, his voice careful, like he wasn't sure if that was the right thing to say. I winced at the bluntness of his words, but I nodded. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to fully. You know. But my body's definitely changing. My hips are wider, my waist is smaller, and my chest? I trailed off, gesturing vaguely to the slight curve of my breast. It's happening, and I don't know how to stop it. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between us. I stared down at my hands, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I couldn't bring myself to look at Jamie. I didn't want to see whatever expression was on his face, whether it was confusion or judgment or something worse. But then, to my surprise, Jamie let out a breath and said, Okay. I blinked, looking up at him. Okay. He shrugged, his expression softening. Yeah. None. Okay. So your body's changing. That's cool. I stared at him, completely dumbfounded. That's cool. Jamie smiled, leaning back on his hands again, completely unfazed. Yeah, man. I mean, it's a lot to take in, but you're still you, right? I nodded slowly, unsure of where he was going with this. So, if you're still you, then nothing's really changed, he said, his voice casual, like we were discussing what to order for dinner. I mean, your body might be different, but you're still Alex. You're still my best friend. I felt a lump forming in my throat, and I quickly looked away, blinking back the sudden sting of tears. I hadn't realized just how much I'd been holding on to this fear. This fear that Jamie would look at me differently, that he wouldn't want to be around me anymore. But here he was, sitting next to me, like nothing had changed. Like this huge, life-altering thing wasn't a big deal at all. You're really okay with this? I asked, my voice shaky. Jamie nodded. Yeah, man, why wouldn't I be? I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, relief flooding through me like a wave. I didn't know how you'd take it. I was scared it would freak you out or, I don't know, make things weird. Jamie snorted, shaking his head. Alex, we've been friends since we were like 5. You think something like this is gonna change that? I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe again. He wasn't looking at me like I was some kind of alien or a freak. He was looking at me like I was just me. Just Alex. Thanks, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. That means a lot. Jamie smiled, the kind of smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. Of course, man. You know I've got your back. For a moment, we just sat there in silence, the weight of the conversation settling between us. And then, because Jamie was Jamie, he broke the tension with a grin and said, So, does this mean I can start borrowing your makeup? I snorted, rolling my eyes. Dude, I don't even wear makeup. Yet, Jamie said, waggling his eyebrows. Just wait. You'll be giving me beauty tips in no time. I shook my head, laughing despite myself. You're an idiot. Yeah, but I'm your idiot, Jamie said with a wink. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Somehow, Jamie had taken this huge, terrifying thing and made it feel okay. Like it wasn't the end of the world. Like I wasn't alone in this. Later that night, after Jamie had gone home, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My t-shirt clung to my body in a way that was impossible to ignore now. The curve of my chest, the soft swell of my hips, the way my waist cinched in just a little too much to pass as masculine anymore. I ran a hand over my stomach, feeling the tautness of my skin, the way my body was slowly but surely transforming, different. Something feminine. It wasn't just my body that was changing, though. My emotions felt like they were on a roller coaster, constantly shifting and twisting in ways I couldn't control. And then there were my feelings for Jamie. Feelings I didn't even know how to begin to untangle. I'd never thought about Jamie like that before. He'd always been my best friend, the guy I could count on for anything. But lately, being around him made me feel things that I didn't understand. My heart would race when he smiled at me, and when he touched me, even just a casual hand on my shoulder, it sent a jolt of electricity through me that I couldn't explain. I didn't know if it was because of the changes in my body, or if it was something else. Something I'd been ignoring for a long time. But whatever it was, it scared me. What if I'm falling for him? The thought made my stomach twist in knots. I wasn't supposed to feel like this, was I? Jamie was my best friend. He wasn't supposed to make me feel like this. But the more time I spent with him, the more I realized that maybe things between us weren't as simple as they used to be. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. It was getting longer now, brushing against the back of my neck in soft waves. Everything about me was getting softer, more feminine. My skin was smoother. My face was changing. My cheekbones higher, my jawline softer. And my chest, I looked down at the small but undeniable swell of my breasts. The fabric of my t-shirt stretched slightly over them. I'm changing. And not just physically. Emotionally, too. I was feeling things I'd never felt before, and I didn't know how to deal with them. Part of me wanted to run away, to ignore the growing feelings I had for Jamie, to pretend like everything was still the way it used to be. But another part of me, a part that was getting harder to ignore, didn't want to stop feeling this way. I wasn't sure what was happening between me and Jamie, or where these new emotions were coming from. But one thing was clear. Things between us were changing, just like I was. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't so scared of that. The next day, Jamie texted me, asking if I wanted to hang out again. I found myself smiling as I typed out a quick reply. Yeah, I'd like that. We were still figuring things out, still navigating this new territory. But for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Chapter 7. The first major change. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the weight on my chest. For a groggy moment, I thought maybe I'd fallen asleep with my phone, or something heavy on top of me. But as I blinked the sleep from my eyes and shifted in bed, the sensation didn't go away. In fact, it only intensified. There was a pull, a stretch, like something was attached. I frowned, my mind still foggy from the fever that had kept me bedridden for the last 3 days. I pushed myself up into a sitting position, and that's when I felt it, when I really felt it. I glanced down, and my breath caught in my throat. My chest, which had been gradually changing over the past few months, had developed even further. But this was something else entirely. There was no mistaking it now. My breasts had grown. A lot. The small, tentative swell that had been there before had transformed into fully developed breasts, pressing against the fabric of my t-shirt, stretching it in ways that made the material cling uncomfortably. I stared down at them in disbelief, my hands shaking as I reached up to touch them, almost afraid they wouldn't be real, almost hoping this was some weird fever dream. But they were real. Too real. The soft, warm flesh yielded under my fingers, and the sensation sent a strange, unfamiliar jolt through my body. "Oh my God," I whispered, my voice shaky. This can't be happening. But it was happening. I'd felt it building for weeks, the slow, steady changes that had been reshaping my body bit by bit. The softening of my face, the widening of my hips, the tightening of my waist. But this was undeniable. My body was no longer just hinting at femininity. It was screaming it. I tugged at the hem of my shirt, trying to pull it away from my chest, but it was no use. The fabric clung to me like a second skin, outlining every new curve, every change. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest as panic started to creep in. "What am I going to do?" I muttered to myself, my voice thick with anxiety. Before I could spiral too far into my thoughts, there was a soft knock at the door. "Alex," my mom's voice drifted through the crack, soft and concerned. "Are you awake, honey?" I froze, my hands still hovering over my chest. She'd been checking on me constantly while I was sick, bringing me soup and cold compresses, making sure I was staying hydrated. But now that I was awake and different, I wasn't sure I wanted her to see me like this. Yeah," I croaked, my voice hoarse from disuse. "I'm awake." The door creaked open, and my mom stepped inside, her face immediately softening with relief when she saw me sitting up. "Oh, thank goodness." I was starting to worry. "How are you feeling?" I opened my mouth to answer. But before I could get a single word out, she stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening as they landed on my chest. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just stared at each other, the silence heavy and awkward. Then, to my absolute horror, her expression shifted from surprise to something softer. Something almost understanding. "Oh, sweetheart," she said quietly, her voice filled with a kind of gentle sympathy that made my stomach drop. "It's happening, isn't it?" My face burned with embarrassment as I looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "Yeah," I mumbled, my voice barely audible. It's happening." She crossed the room in a few quick steps and sat down on the edge of my bed, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "How are you feeling about it?" I hesitated, my throat tight with emotion. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice shaky. "I'm scared and confused, and I don't know what to do." My mom was quiet for a moment, her hand still resting gently on my arm. "It's a lot to take in," she said softly, "but you don't have to go through it alone. I'm here, okay? Whatever you need, I'm here." I nodded, but the lump in my throat only seemed to grow. I hadn't realized just how much I'd been holding in, how much fear and anxiety had been building up inside me. Now, with my mom sitting next to me, offering comfort without judgment, it all started to bubble to the surface. "I don't know how to deal with this," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't know how to be like this." My mom's expression softened even more, if that was possible. "You don't have to figure it all out right now," she said gently. "But you do need to take care of yourself. And that means accepting the changes that are happening to your body." I bit my lip, still staring down at my hands. "I don't even have clothes that fit anymore," I muttered. "Everything feels wrong." My mom smiled, squeezing my arm reassuringly. "Well, that's something we can fix." I blinked, looking up at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" She stood up, her smile widening. "I mean, we're going shopping." I wasn't sure what to expect as we pulled into the parking lot of the mall later that afternoon. Part of me was dreading it. The idea of walking into a women's clothing store, of trying on clothes that weren't meant for who I used to be. But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, was a little curious. Maybe even a tiny bit excited. I wasn't ready to admit that to myself just yet, though. As we walked into the department store, my mom led the way, steering me toward the women's section with a kind of calm certainty that I envied. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, every step making me hyper-aware of the way my body moved, of the way my chest bounced slightly with every movement. My old t-shirt was doing a terrible job of containing everything, and I couldn't help but cross my arms over my chest, trying to hide the obvious changes. My mom, of course, noticed immediately. "Sweetie, you're going to need something more supportive than that," she said, her tone matter-of-fact but gentle. "A bra will help. I know it's a big step, but trust me, it'll make things a lot more comfortable." I swallowed hard, my cheeks flushing with embarrassment. "A bra?" The word felt foreign on my tongue, like it didn't belong to me. My mom nodded, giving me a reassuring smile. "I'll help you find one that fits. You'll feel a lot better once you have the right support." I followed her through the aisles, my heart pounding in my chest. The racks of clothes felt like they were closing in on me, and I had to remind myself to breathe. This was all so surreal, so not what I'd imagined for myself. But as much as I wanted to run, I knew I couldn't keep hiding from this. My body wasn't going to let me. We made our way to the lingerie section, and I felt like my face was on fire. There were bras in every size and color imaginable, and I had no idea where to even start. My mom, of course, was calm and collected, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Let's start with something simple," she said, scanning the racks. "We'll get you measured first, and then we can find a few styles that work for you." Measured. The idea made me feel even more self-conscious, but I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. A saleswoman came over a few minutes later, smiling warmly, as she guided me into one of the fitting rooms. The whole process felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. But when the tape measure wrapped around my chest and the saleswoman announced my size, reality hit me like a freight train. "You're about a B cup, dear," she said kindly, "a little on the fuller side. Let me grab a few options for you to try on." I stared at her, my mind spinning. A B cup? How had this happened so fast? It felt like just yesterday I was still flat-chested, still pretending that nothing was changing. But now, there was no denying it. The saleswoman returned with a few bras, in different colors and styles, and I reluctantly took them from her, stepping into the fitting room. My mom waited just outside, giving me space but ready to help if I needed it. I stared at the bras in my hands, my heart racing. I had no idea how to even put one on. After a few awkward attempts, I finally managed to get the straps over my shoulders and the clasp fastened. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The bra fit snugly against my skin, lifting and shaping my breasts in a way that made them look even more pronounced. But the strangest part was how comfortable it felt. The weight that had been pulling at my chest all morning was suddenly supported, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I turned slightly, eyeing my reflection from different angles. My body looked different. Not just because of the bra, but because of everything. My hips were wider, my waist narrower, my face softer. I was undeniably feminine now, and there was no hiding it. But instead of the panic I'd expected to feel, there was something else. Something I couldn't quite put into words. Curiosity, maybe, a strange sort of fascination with the person staring back at me in the mirror. I didn't hate it. I stepped out of the fitting room, my heart still pounding, and found my mom waiting with a few more clothes draped over her arm. "How does it feel?" she asked, her voice gentle. I hesitated, then nodded. It feels okay. Better than I thought it would. She smiled, her eyes soft with understanding. Good. Now, let's find you a few more things that fit. The rest of the day was a blur of trying on clothes. My mom led me through the aisles, picking out tops and jeans, skirts and dresses, all while offering gentle encouragement. At first I was hesitant, nervous even. But as I tried on each new piece, something started to shift inside me. The clothes fit differently than my old ones. They hugged my curves in ways that felt strange but not entirely unpleasant. The jeans, for example, had a higher waist that accentuated the curve of my hips and made my legs look longer. The tops were softer, more fitted, and they didn't hang awkwardly off my frame the way my old t-shirts had started to. And then there was the underwear. I hadn't expected to feel anything about underwear. But the moment I tried on a pair of women's panties, I was struck by how much more comfortable they were, how they seemed to fit my body in ways that my old boxers never had. They didn't bunch or pinch, they just fit. As I stood in the fitting room, staring at my reflection in a simple outfit, jeans and a fitted blouse, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't that I was suddenly comfortable with everything happening to my body. I was still scared, still confused, still unsure of what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was fighting against myself. I stepped out of the fitting room, and my mom smiled when she saw me. "You look great," she said softly. I glanced down at the outfit, then back up at her. "Yeah," I said, my voice quiet but steady. I think I do." That night, after we got home, I collapsed onto my bed, utterly exhausted. Physically, emotionally, mentally. It felt like I'd run a marathon. But as I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd come. Just a few months ago, I was still pretending that nothing was changing, still trying to hold on to the version of myself that I thought I had to be. But now, things were different. I was different. And while I wasn't sure what that meant yet, I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let go of the person I used to be. Maybe it was okay to embrace the changes, to accept the person I was becoming. It was scary. It was confusing. But it was also kind of exciting. And for the first time, I wasn't so afraid to see where this journey would take me. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turmoil. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, gripping the edge of the sink until my knuckles turned white. My reflection stared back at me, but it wasn't a face I fully recognized anymore. It wasn't just the breasts. They had been the most obvious change, the hardest to ignore. But now, everything seemed different. My face was softer. The angles that used to define my jawline and cheekbones had smoothed out. My eyes looked bigger, framed by longer lashes, and my lips seemed fuller. Even my hair, which I hadn't cut in months, now fell in gentle waves around my face, brushing against my neck in a way that felt simultaneously foreign and right. But that was the problem, wasn't it? It did feel right, at least sometimes, and that terrified me. I leaned in closer, studying my reflection, like I was trying to solve some impossible puzzle. My waist had become more defined in the last few weeks, cinching in just above my hips, which had continued to widen. My butt had grown too, filling out my jeans in ways that made me feel uncomfortable, like my body was betraying me by becoming something I wasn't ready to accept. I sighed, running a hand through my hair, which now slid through my fingers like silk. Who am I even becoming? I wasn't Alex anymore. At least, not the Alex I'd always been. The boy who used to wear baggy jeans and oversized t-shirts, who could blend into the background and not think about his body. That boy was gone, replaced by someone who was undeniably feminine, someone who couldn't hide behind loose clothes or slouching shoulders anymore. My body had made sure of that. And yet, I wasn't sure I was ready to be her either. Whoever she was. Later that day, Jamie came over like he always did, but something felt different. We were sitting on the couch in my living room, watching some mindless action movie that neither of us was paying attention to. Jamie was stretched out beside me, his long legs taking up most of the space, while I sat curled up at the other end of the couch, my knees pulled up to my chest. He glanced over at me, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You good?" he asked, his voice casual but laced with concern. I nodded, but the truth was, I wasn't sure. I hadn't been sure for days. Jamie had been my rock through all of this, supporting me without hesitation, treating me like I was still the same person, even when it was obvious I wasn't. But that was part of the problem. He was treating me the same, and yet, I wasn't sure I felt the same. I felt the tension in the air between us, the kind that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just that my body was changing. My feelings for Jamie were, too, and I didn't know what to do with that. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. Jamie didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it. Instead, he shifted closer, draping his arm along the back of the couch, in that effortless way he always did, like it was the most natural thing in the world. But when his arm brushed against my shoulder, I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through me. I stiffened, my heart pounding in my chest. Jamie noticed immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" he asked, his brow furrowing. Did I do something? I shook my head quickly, but the truth was, something was wrong. Or maybe it wasn't wrong exactly. But it was definitely something I didn't know how to deal with. Being close to Jamie used to feel easy, comforting. Now, it felt different. It felt intense. Every time he touched me, even just a casual brush of his hand against mine, I felt this strange, fluttering sensation in my stomach. And it wasn't just because of the changes in my body. It was because of him. "You didn't do anything," I said, my voice quieter than I'd intended. I don't know, Jamie. Everything's been weird lately." He tilted his head, looking at me with those deep, dark eyes that always seemed to see right through me. "Weird how?" I hesitated, not sure how to explain it. How could I tell him that my feelings for him were shifting? That I wasn't just confused about my body, but about us, about what I wanted from him, from myself. I didn't even know if I could put it into words. It's just, everything's changing, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm changing. Jamie was quiet for a moment, his gaze steady on mine. Yeah, he said softly. I know. But you're still you, Alex. That hasn't changed. But it has, I thought. Everything has. I looked down at my hands, twisting them together in my lap. I don't feel like me anymore, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know who I am. Jamie shifted closer, his arm brushing mine again, but this time I didn't flinch. Instead, I found myself leaning into him, drawn to the warmth and comfort of his presence. You're still figuring it out, he said gently. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now. I bit my lip, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to spill over. But what if I never figure it out? What if I don't know how to be this new person? Jamie didn't hesitate. He reached out, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, his touch soft but grounding. You'll figure it out, he said, his voice steady and sure. And I'll be here with you, no matter what. I felt my throat tighten, the tears finally slipping free. I didn't know why I was crying, whether it was because of the relief of having someone like Jamie by my side, or because of the overwhelming fear of what was happening to me. Maybe it was both. But as I sat there, leaning into Jamie's comforting touch, I realized that it wasn't just fear I was feeling. It was something else. Something deeper. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. That night, I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Jamie had stayed for a while after our conversation, but eventually he had to leave. And now I was alone with my thoughts, which was never a good thing these days. I couldn't stop thinking about him, about the way his touch had felt, about the way my heart had raced when he looked at me. It wasn't just friendship anymore. It was more than that, and I didn't know how to handle it. Nah. My feelings for Jamie had always been strong. He was my best friend, the person I trusted most in the world. But now I was starting to wonder if those feelings ran deeper than I'd realized. I shifted in bed, feeling the unfamiliar weight of my breasts pressing against the mattress. Even lying down felt different now. My body had changed so much, and it was still changing. My waist had gotten even smaller, my hips curvier, and my butt, my butt, had filled out so much that my old jeans barely fit anymore. Every time I walked, I could feel the way my muscles moved, the way my body swayed in ways that weren't masculine at all. And then there was my voice. It had started to change too, softening, getting lighter. I hadn't noticed at first, but now, every time I spoke, I could hear it. I wasn't sure if anyone else had noticed yet, but I could feel the difference in my throat, in the way the words came out. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming flood of emotions. I felt trapped between two worlds, caught between who I used to be and who I was becoming. I wasn't Alex, the boy I'd always been, anymore. But I wasn't fully her either. Whoever she was, I didn't even know if I wanted to be her. The next day, I tried to go about my routine as usual, but everything felt off. I pulled on one of my old t-shirts, but it clung to my chest in ways that made me feel self-conscious. My jeans were too tight around my hips and butt, and I had to constantly tug at them to keep them from riding up. Every movement felt awkward, like my body didn't belong to me anymore. I caught my reflection in the mirror as I was brushing my teeth, and once again, I was struck by how different I looked. My face was softer, my features more delicate. I looked pretty, and that scared me. I was about to turn away from the mirror when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Jamie. Jamie, wanna hang out today? I stared at the message, my heart doing that stupid fluttery thing again. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to spend time with him, to feel the comfort of his presence. But I also wasn't sure I could handle being around him right now. Not with the way my feelings were spiraling out of control. I hesitated for a moment, then typed out a reply. Me. Sure. Come over in like an hour. I set my phone down, my stomach twisting with a mix of excitement and anxiety. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to navigate these new feelings, these new changes in my body and my mind. But I knew one thing for sure. Jamie was the only person who made me feel like I wasn't losing myself completely. And maybe, for now, that was enough. An hour later, Jamie showed up at my door, his usual easy smile on his face. "Hey," he said, stepping inside. "How are you feeling today?" I shrugged, trying to play it cool. "Same as yesterday, I guess." He gave me a knowing look, like he could see right through me. "You sure?" I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could say anything, Jamie reached out and pulled me into a hug. It wasn't unusual for him to hug me. He'd always been the affectionate type. But this time, it felt different. This time, the warmth of his arms around me made my heart race, made my breath catch in my throat. I hugged him back, trying to ignore the way my body seemed to fit against his in ways that felt disturbingly right. When he finally pulled away, I could barely meet his eyes, my mind spinning with 1,000 thoughts I couldn't put into words. "Alex," he said softly, his voice serious now. "You know I'm here for you, right? No matter what." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. "Good," he said, giving me a small smile. "Because I'm not going anywhere." Later that night, after Jamie had left, I found myself standing in front of the mirror again. I stared at my reflection, my mind still reeling from everything that had happened that day. My body was changing. My feelings were changing. And the more time I spent with Jamie, the more I realized that maybe I was changing too. Maybe I wasn't just becoming someone new on the outside. Maybe on the inside, I was becoming someone I hadn't expected. Someone who wasn't afraid to feel things. Someone who wasn't afraid to be someone different. But I wasn't sure if I was ready to accept that yet. As I turned away from the mirror and crawled into bed, I knew one thing for sure. The journey wasn't over yet. I still had a lot to figure out. About myself, about Jamie, about what it meant to be me. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel quite so lost. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Chapter 9. Physical Transformation Accelerates. I woke up to the sensation of something pressing against my hip. Something soft yet firm. For a brief moment, I thought maybe I'd left a pillow or blanket bunched up under me. But when I shifted, the sensation followed. It wasn't a pillow. It was me. I blinked into the morning light streaming through the blinds. My brain still sluggish from sleep, but the reality of it all hit quicker than I could brace myself. My hips. They'd grown again. I could feel the way they curved out from my waist. The way they pressed against the sheets, creating a new, unfamiliar shape underneath me. With a groan, I pushed myself up into a sitting position, only to be met with yet another reminder of how much my body had changed. My breasts, already a noticeable presence, seemed to have filled out even more overnight. They pulled slightly against the fabric of my tank top, which was now so tight I could barely breathe in it. I glanced down, my heart sinking as I saw how much my chest had grown. This isn't happening, I thought, though the evidence to the contrary was right there, staring me in the face. It can't be happening this fast. But it was. The last few weeks had been like watching a time-lapse video of my body changing. Everything was happening so fast now. My hips, my waist, my chest, It was like my body had finally decided to stop pretending and just go full throttle into this transformation I wasn't ready for. I slipped out of bed, my legs shaking slightly as I stood. The extra weight on my chest and hips threw off my balance, and I had to catch myself on the edge of my desk to keep from stumbling. Even walking felt different now. My thighs brushed against each other as I moved, and my hips swayed in a way that felt unnatural, like I was being forced into a body that wasn't mine. I looked over at the mirror hanging on the wall, half of me not wanting to see what I already knew was there, but the other half, the more masochistic part, couldn't resist. I stepped in front of the mirror and froze. My face, it was almost unrecognizable now. The sharpness that had once defined my jawline had softened into delicate curves. My lips were fuller, my lashes longer. My nose had always been on the smaller side, but now it looked even more petite, almost dainty. And my eyes were the only thing that still looked like me, but even they seemed larger, more expressive, framed by the thick lashes that now curled naturally. I ran a hand through my hair, which had grown long enough to brush against my shoulders in soft waves, and sighed. There was no denying it anymore. I looked feminine. Completely, undeniably feminine. Great, I muttered under my breath. Just what I needed. Later that day I ventured out of the house, hoping that maybe some fresh air would help clear my head. It didn't. I had barely made it 2 blocks when I felt it. The unmistakable sensation of eyes on me. At first I thought it was just my imagination. I mean, why would anyone be staring at me? But when I glanced up, I saw 2 guys standing on the corner, their eyes following me as I walked past. My stomach twisted uncomfortably. I spin away. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself, trying to shrink into it. But there was no hiding the fact that my body had become something that attracted attention now. The jeans I was wearing, which had once been baggy and comfortable, now clung to my hips and thighs in ways that I wasn't used to. Every step I took made me hyper-aware of how my butt moved, how my hips swayed. It wasn't something I could control anymore. My body had taken on a life of its own, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. "Hey, baby," one of the guys called after me, his voice dripping with sleazy confidence. I froze, my heart leaping into my throat. I wasn't used to this. I wasn't used to being seen like this, being perceived like this. Ignoring them, I picked up my pace, my eyes fixed on the sidewalk in front of me as I hurried past. I could hear them laughing behind me, their voices fading as I turned the corner and ducked into a small cafe. I ordered a coffee, my hands shaking as I handed the barista my cash. I couldn't stop thinking about the way those guys had looked at me, the way their eyes had lingered on parts of my body that I wasn't even comfortable with yet. Sitting down at a small table in the back, I tried to calm my racing heart, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. If my body kept changing like this, if I kept looking more and more feminine, this kind of attention was only going to get worse, and I had no idea how to deal with it. When I got home, my mom was waiting for me in the kitchen, a knowing look on her face. "Alex," she called out, her voice gentle but firm. "Can we talk?" I sighed, dropping my bag onto the counter. "Do we have to?" She gave me a sympathetic smile, the kind that let me know she wasn't going to back down. "I think it's important." I groaned, but followed her into the living room anyway, sinking down onto the couch as she sat beside me. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She just looked at me, her eyes scanning my face like she was trying to figure out the right words to say. "I know things have been difficult for you lately," she began, her voice soft. "And I know your body is changing in ways that feel out of your control." I huffed, crossing my arms over my chest. "That's an understatement." My mom smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I can't imagine how overwhelming it must be for you," she said. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you. Every step of the way." I glanced at her, my heart aching with a mix of gratitude and frustration. "I just don't know how to deal with this, Mom," I admitted, my voice cracking. "I mean, look at me." I gestured to my body, the curves that had once been foreign now, undeniably a part of me. "I don't even know who I am anymore." My mom reached out, placing a hand on my knee. "You're still you, Alex," she said gently. "Your body might be changing, but that doesn't change who you are inside." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "But it does change things, Mom. People are starting to notice me in ways I'm not ready for. I don't know how to handle it." Her expression softened even more, and she squeezed my knee reassuringly. "I know it's scary, and I know it feels like everything is happening so fast. But you don't have to do this alone." I wiped at my eyes, sniffling. "What am I supposed to do when guys look at me like that?" My mom's expression darkened slightly, a protective edge creeping into her voice. "Unfortunately, there are always going to be people who don't know how to respect boundaries," she said. "But there are ways to handle it. You don't owe anyone your attention, Alex. If someone makes you uncomfortable, you have every right to walk away, to ignore them, to stand up for yourself." I nodded, but the knot in my stomach didn't loosen. It was one thing to say that, but actually doing it, that was a whole different story. "And if you ever feel unsafe," she added, her voice serious now, "you call me. Or you call Jamie. You don't have to face this on your own." Later that evening, Jamie came over. I hadn't told him about the incident with the guys earlier, but somehow, he seemed to sense that something was off. We were sitting in my room, playing video games like we usually did when Jamie nudged me with his elbow. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but insistent. I shrugged, keeping my eyes on the screen. "Yeah, I'm fine." Jamie wasn't buying it. He paused the game, turning to face me. "You don't seem fine." I sighed, setting the controller down and leaning back against the wall. "It's just, everything is so weird right now, you know?" Jamie nodded, waiting for me to continue. "I went out for a walk earlier," I said, my voice quieter now. "And some guys, they noticed me in a way I wasn't used to." Jamie's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "What did they do?" "Nothing," I said quickly, not wanting to make it a bigger deal than it was. "They just looked at me and said some stuff. But it freaked me out." Jamie was quiet for a moment, his eyes scanning my face. "I'm sorry, Alex," he said eventually, his voice low. "That sucks." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. It did suck. But it was also my new reality, whether I liked it or not. Jamie hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "Do you want me to go talk to them? Or, beat them up?" I couldn't help but laugh, despite the heaviness in my chest. "You beat someone up? You couldn't beat up a paper bag." Jamie grinned, clearly relieved that I was laughing again. "Hey, I'll have you know I've been working out. Sort of." "Yeah, sure," I teased, nudging him with my foot. "Maybe if you start lifting something heavier than a video game controller." He laughed, and for a moment, the tension between us melted away. It was easy, familiar. But as the laughter faded, I found myself looking at Jamie differently again. He wasn't just my best friend anymore. He was more, and that scared me as much as everything else. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the changes that were happening to me. My body had become something I didn't fully recognize. My hips were wider, my waist narrower. My breasts and butt had fully developed, and my face was now undeniably feminine. Even my voice had changed. It had become lighter, breathier, with a higher pitch that made me cringe every time I spoke. But it wasn't just my body that was changing. It was the way people saw me. The way I saw me. I wasn't ready to be seen like this. I wasn't ready for the attention, for the way men's eyes lingered on me in ways that made my skin crawl. I wasn't ready for the way Jamie looked at me sometimes, like he was seeing me in a new light. But, ready or not, this was my life now. My body wasn't going to stop changing just because I wasn't ready for it. And neither was the world around me. I wasn't sure what the future held for me, or how I was going to navigate this new reality. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't do it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Chapter 10. A New Identity. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, as if it held the answers to the questions swirling in my mind. My body had changed. There was no denying that now. My hips flared out in a way that gave me a distinctly hourglass shape. My waist was narrow, and my chest was full, pulling at the fabric of the t-shirt I was wearing. My face had softened so much that I no longer recognized the person staring back at me. My lips were fuller, my skin smoother, and my eyes were the same. And yet, I could see something different in them. A vulnerability, maybe. Or was it strength? I couldn't tell anymore. The transformation was complete. Physically, at least. I was undeniably feminine now, and the world saw me that way. But inside, I was still struggling to catch up with the changes. I still felt like Alex. At least, the Alex I had known for most of my life. But I wasn't him anymore. Not really. And now, I was faced with a decision I had been avoiding for weeks, whether or not to choose a new name. A name. It seemed like such a small thing, and yet it felt monumental. It wasn't just about what people called me. It was about who I was becoming. A new name meant acknowledging that I was no longer the person I used to be. It meant embracing this new identity, this new body, this new version of myself that I was still struggling to understand. I sighed, running a hand through my hair, which now fell in soft waves around my face. It used to be short and scruffy, the kind of haircut that required no effort. Now it was long enough that I had to brush it every morning, and sometimes even style it. Another reminder of how much had changed. I wasn't sure I was ready for this. But the truth was, I didn't have a choice anymore. The world saw me as a woman now, and I needed to decide if I was ready to see myself that way too. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my mom, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. She was making tea, the kettle whistling softly on the stove as she moved around the kitchen with the kind of ease that only came from years of practice. I watched her for a moment, wondering how she could be so calm when I felt like my entire world was spinning out of control. "Mom," I said quietly, my voice barely louder than a whisper. "Can we talk about something?" She glanced over at me, her expression softening as she saw the look on my face. She turned off the stove and brought the tea over to the table, setting a cup down in front of me before sitting down across from me. "Of course," she said, her voice gentle. "What's on your mind?" I stared down at the cup of tea, watching the steam rise in delicate tendrils. I wasn't sure how to start, how to put the confusion I was feeling into words. "I've been thinking about names," I said finally, my voice shaky. "About choosing a new name." My mom didn't say anything at first, just nodded, giving me the space to continue. I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted, my hands fidgeting with the handle of the teacup. Everything's changed so much, and I feel like choosing a new name means letting go of who I used to be. She reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. Her touch was warm, grounding me in the moment. Choosing a new name doesn't mean you have to let go of who you used to be, Alex, she said softly. It just means you're moving forward. You're still you, no matter what name you choose. I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. But what if I don't know who I am anymore? She smiled gently, squeezing my hand. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You're still figuring things out, and that's a process. But choosing a name that feels right to you, that can be part of that process. I nodded slowly, her words sinking in. She was right, of course. I didn't have to know everything right now. I didn't have to have it all figured out. But choosing a name felt like a step forward, a way to start embracing this new identity, even if I was still scared. I've been thinking about Alexis, I said quietly, my voice barely more than a whisper. It's close to Alex, but it feels more like me, or at least who I'm becoming. My mom's smile widened, her eyes softening with pride. Alexis, she repeated, testing the name on her tongue. It's beautiful. And it still feels like you. I felt a lump rise in my throat, my chest tightening with a mix of relief and fear. You think so? You think so? I know so, she said firmly. Alexis suits you. And if it feels right to you, then that's what matters. I nodded, blinking back the tears that were threatening to spill over. This was it. I had made my decision. I wasn't Alex anymore. I was Alexis. Later that night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror again, studying my reflection. But this time, it felt different. For the first time, I wasn't just looking at my body, at the changes that had happened so quickly. I was looking at me. At Alexis. I ran a hand down the curve of my waist, feeling the softness of my skin, the way my body had become so undeniably feminine. My hips flared out in a way that no amount of baggy clothes could hide. My breasts were full, filling out the tank top I was wearing. And my butt, well, it was hard not to notice it now. Even my legs, which had once been stick-thin and awkward, had filled out, giving me a curvaceous figure that I still wasn't used to. And my face. God, my face. It was the most striking change of all. My jawline had softened into delicate curves, my cheekbones were higher, and my lips were fuller. My eyes, framed by thick, dark lashes, were the only thing that still felt like me. But even they seemed different now, more expressive, more vulnerable. I took a deep breath, letting the reality of it all sink in. I wasn't just Alex in a different body. I was Alexis now. And as terrifying as that was, it was also freeing in a way. Like I was finally starting to embrace the person I was becoming, instead of fighting against it. I wasn't sure what the future held for me. I still had so much to figure out. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to move forward, starting to become the person I was meant to be. The next morning, I came downstairs to find my mom in the kitchen, making breakfast. "Morning, Alexis," she said, her voice cheerful as she flipped a pancake. I froze for a second, the sound of my new name catching me off guard. But then, something strange happened. I smiled. "Morning, Mom," I replied, sliding into a seat at the table. She set a plate of pancakes in front of me. "Oh," and I could feel her watching me as I dug in, a small smile playing on her lips. I knew she was proud of me. For taking this step, for embracing this new identity. And honestly, I was starting to feel proud of myself too. "So," she said, sitting down across from me with her own plate, "any thoughts on how you want to tell people about your new name?" I paused, mid-bite, my fork hovering in the air. I hadn't thought about that part yet. Telling my mom had been one thing. She had always been supportive, always had my back. But telling other people, that was a whole different story. I don't know, I admitted, setting my fork down. I mean, I know Jamie's going to be cool with it, but I'm not sure about everyone else. It's a lot. My mom nodded, her expression understanding. It is a lot, she agreed. But you don't have to rush it. You can take your time. Tell people when you're ready. I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me again. I just don't want it to be a big deal, you know. I don't want people to make a fuss about it. She smiled softly. People who care about you will support you, Alexis. And the ones who don't, well, they don't deserve to be in your life anyway. I nodded, appreciating her words, even though the thought of telling people still made my stomach twist with anxiety. I wasn't ready for the world to see me as Alexis yet, but I knew I couldn't hide forever. That afternoon, Jamie came over. We were sitting on the couch, playing video games like we always did. When I paused the game, my heart pounding in my chest, I had to tell him. He was my best friend, and if I couldn't tell him, then I couldn't tell anyone. Hey, Jamie, I said, my voice shaky. He glanced over at me, raising an eyebrow. What's up? I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the controller so tightly, my knuckles were white. I've been thinking about, my name. Jamie blinked, clearly confused. Your name? What about it? I'm not going by Alex anymore, I said, forcing the words out before I could chicken out. I'm going by Alexis. For a moment, Jamie just stared at me, his expression unreadable. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the panic rising in my throat. What if he didn't like it? What if he thought it was weird? But then, Jamie's face broke into a wide grin. Alexis, huh? He said, testing the name out. I like it. It suits you. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, my shoulders sagging as the tension melted away. You think so? Yeah, he said, nudging me with his elbow. It's still you. Just a new version of you. And I'm cool with that. I smiled, my heart swelling with gratitude. Thanks, Jamie. Anytime, Alexis, he said, winking at me before turning back to the game. Now, let's see if a new name helps you suck less at this game. I laughed, shoving him playfully. You're going down, Jamie. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about how much had changed in such a short amount of time. I wasn't Alex anymore. I was Alexis. And while that still scared me, still made me feel like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into the unknown, I also felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe I didn't have everything figured out yet. Maybe I was still scared of what the future held. But for the first time, I felt like I was starting to become the person I was meant to be. And that was enough for now. Alexis. It was a name that felt like a new beginning. A name that felt like me. Chapter 11. The relationship deepens. I could feel the warmth of Jamie's body next to mine, as we sat on the couch, legs lightly touching. The comfortable silence between us, broken only by the hum of the TV. We'd done this 1,000 times before, sat in this exact spot, side by side, watching movies or playing video games. But tonight felt different. I felt different. My body, now undeniably feminine, responded to every little brush of his arm against mine. It was like my skin was hypersensitive, every touch sending a shiver down my spine that I couldn't explain away anymore. I had tried to ignore it for weeks, chalking it up to the awkwardness of my transformation. But the truth was, it wasn't just my body changing. It was everything. The way I felt, the way I saw Jamie, the way my stomach flipped every time he smiled at me. And that terrified me. I glanced over at him, watching as he absent-mindedly scrolled through his phone. His face was relaxed, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he stared at the screen, completely oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside me. Jamie had always been my best friend. We'd known each other since elementary school. Back when life was simple and nothing was confusing. Back when I was still Alex, a boy, and he was just Jamie, the goofy kid who'd sit next to me in class and make stupid jokes that made me laugh so hard I couldn't breathe. But now everything was different. I wasn't Alex anymore. I was Alexis. And somewhere along the way, my feelings for Jamie had shifted, deepened. I couldn't pinpoint when it had happened, but I knew it was real, and that scared me more than anything else. "Hey," Jamie said, breaking the silence. "You okay? You've been quiet." I blinked, snapping out of my thoughts. "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." He raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. "About what?" I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. How could I possibly explain what was going on in my head? How could I tell him that every time he touched me, even accidentally, it felt like my skin was on fire? That I couldn't stop thinking about what it would feel like to kiss him? How? To be held by him? To be more than just his best friend? "Just stuff," I said lamely, my voice shaky. Jamie gave me a look, the kind that said he knew I was hiding something, but wasn't going to push it. "All right," he said, leaning back against the couch. "But you know you can talk to me about anything, right?" I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "Yeah, I know." We lapsed into silence again, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my heart racing as I tried to focus on the movie playing in front of us. But all I could think about was Jamie. The way his arm brushed against mine, the way his knee bumped into mine every time he shifted, the way his cologne, something woodsy and warm, filled my senses and made it impossible to think straight. I wasn't sure how much longer I could take it. The tension between us had been growing for weeks, and I knew it was only a matter of time before something happened. That night, though, I wasn't prepared for how fast things would shift. We were sitting even closer now, the space between us non-existent. I could feel the heat radiating off his body, and it was making me dizzy. I didn't realize how tightly I was gripping the edge of the couch until Jamie shifted again, his shoulder pressing into mine. "Alexis?" he said softly, his voice cutting through the fog of confusion in my head. I turned to look at him, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. There was something in his eyes, something I hadn't seen before. Or maybe I had, but I had been too scared to acknowledge it. His gaze was soft, almost hesitant. And for the first time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. This thing between us. Before I could think too much about it, before I could talk myself out of it, Jamie reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed against my cheek, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as I stared at him wide-eyed. "Jamie, I started, but my voice trailed off when I saw the look on his face. He was looking at me, differently. Not like a friend. Not like the Jamie I'd known for years. He was looking at me like I was something more. Something he wanted. And my heart was in my throat, and I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. "What are you doing?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Jamie's hand lingered near my face for a moment, longer before he pulled it back, looking slightly embarrassed. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice low. "I just..." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. This was it. This was the moment where everything would change. I could feel it. And even though I was terrified, I didn't want to stop it. Before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in, a small, hesitant movement that felt like the bravest thing I'd ever done. Jamie's eyes widened in surprise, but he didn't move away. Instead, he leaned in too, closing the distance between us so slowly that my heart felt like it was going to explode from the anticipation. And then, before I could even process what was happening, our lips touched. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like neither of us was sure if this was really happening. Then, something shifted. It was like a dam had broken, and suddenly, we couldn't get enough of each other. Jamie's hand came up to cup my cheek, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, my heart racing as I wrapped my arms around his neck, deepening the kiss. I lost myself in the softness of his lips, in the way his hands slid down to my waist, pulling me against him. My body responded instinctively, pressing closer to him as the kiss grew more urgent, more intense. I could feel the heat between us, the way our bodies fit together, like we had been waiting for this moment for years. In the back of my mind, I knew I should slow down, but I didn't want to. I couldn't. All I could think about was Jamie, his hands on my back, his lips on mine. The way he was making me feel like I was completely unraveling. Before I even realized what was happening, I was climbing onto his lap, straddling him as our kisses became more heated. Jamie's hands gripped my hips, steadying me as I settled against him, my body pressing into his. The sensation of his strong hands on my waist, and the way my body fit so perfectly against his, made my head spin. For a long, breathless moment, nothing else existed. Just us. His lips on mine, his hands on my body. The way he made me feel like I was finally where I was supposed to be. But then, reality hit me like a cold splash of water. We were on the couch, and I was on his lap. And this was Jamie, my best friend. The guy I'd known practically my whole life. What were we doing? What was I doing? I pulled back suddenly, gasping for air, my heart racing as I stared down at him, wide-eyed. Jamie's chest was heaving, his expression a mix of surprise and something else, something deeper, more intense. There was a beat of silence, where neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. We just stared at each other, the weight of what had just happened settling between us like a heavy cloud. "Jamie," I whispered, my voice shaky. I don't know what this means." He was still breathing hard, his hands resting lightly on my hips, like he wasn't sure if he should let go or pull me closer. "Me neither," he admitted, his voice just as shaky as mine. I wanted to tears. But I liked it. I blinked, my mind spinning. I had liked it too. More than liked it. That was what scared me. I hadn't expected to feel this way, to want him the way I did. And now that it had happened, I didn't know how to make sense of it. "I'm so confused," I said, my voice breaking slightly. Jamie's expression softened, and he gently moved his hands away, giving me some space. "It's okay," he said quietly. "We don't have to figure it all out right now." I nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. He was right. We didn't have to have all the answers tonight. But even so, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us, something that couldn't be undone. The next few days were a blur of emotions I didn't know how to process. Every time I thought about the kiss, about the way I had ended up on Jamie's lap, pressed so close to him my skin still tingled, I felt a mix of excitement and terror. I had liked it. That much was clear. But what did that mean? Did it mean I had feelings for Jamie? Or had it just been the heat of the moment, a product of the tension that had been building between us? I wasn't sure, and that uncertainty was eating away at me. My new body wasn't helping matters either. I was hyper-aware of every physical sensation now. Every touch, every brush of fabric against my skin. My body was different, and it responded to things in ways I wasn't used to. And being around Jamie made it even more confusing. The way my stomach flipped when he smiled at me. The way my heart raced when he touched me, even if it was just a casual bump of his arm against mine. I couldn't deny it anymore. I was attracted to him. And that scared me more than anything else. One evening, Jamie came over again, and we sat on the couch like we always did. But this time, the air between us was charged with an unspoken tension. I could feel it, the way we were both hyper-aware of each other now. The way our legs brushed against each other, sending a shiver down my spine. The way his eyes lingered on me a little longer than usual. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "Jamie," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." He turned to look at me, his expression serious. "Yeah, we do." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "About the kiss." He nodded, his eyes searching mine. "I know." I bit my lip, trying to find the right words. I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted, my voice shaky. "But I know that I liked it. And that scares me." Jamie was quiet for a moment, his gaze softening. "It scares me too," he said finally. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't have to have it all figured out right now." I blinked, surprised by his words. "You think?" He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Yeah. I mean, we've both been through a lot lately. And maybe this is just part of figuring things out. We don't have to put a label on it." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. He was right. We didn't have to rush into anything. We could take our time, figure things out as we went. "Okay," I said softly, my heart pounding in my chest. "We can take it slow." Jamie smiled, and for the first time in days, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. We didn't have to have all the answers right now. We could just be us, whatever that meant. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the kiss. It had been soft, sweet, and yet it had stirred something inside me that I hadn't expected. I was starting to realize that my feelings for Jamie went beyond friendship, and while that terrified me, it also excited me. I didn't know where things were going between us, but for the first time in weeks I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was Alexis, and I was falling for my best friend. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Chapter 12. The Final Stages of Transformation. I stood in front of the mirror, the same one I'd stared into countless times over the past few months. But this time, something was different. It wasn't just the reflection staring back at me. It was the way I felt looking at it. For the first time, I wasn't overwhelmed by confusion or a sense of loss. For the first time, I didn't feel like a stranger in my own skin. I tilted my head slightly, letting my hair, now long, soft and full, cascade over my shoulders. It had grown so much that I had to style it, which was still a strange new responsibility. I ran a hand through the silky strands, marveling at how different it felt from the short, scruffy hair I'd had as Alex. Back then, it was always a mess. Now it framed my face in soft waves, adding to the undeniable femininity that had taken over every inch of my body. My breasts were fuller now, too, round and firm, pressing against the fabric of the bra I'd finally learned how to wear properly. That had been an adventure in itself. It had made me feel like an awkward teenager all over again, fumbling with something so basic, like learning to ride a bike for the first time. But now, I stood there, finally able to appreciate the way the bra lifted and shaped me, making my clothes fit better, making me fit better. I ran my hands down my sides, over my waist, which had narrowed into a soft curve that led to my hips. God, my hips. They flared out in a way that still took me by surprise sometimes, especially when I caught my reflection in windows or mirrors. They made my body feel different when I moved, and I could feel the heavy sway in my step that had come with them. Even my thighs had filled out, giving me the kind of shapely legs that I never thought I'd have. And my face. My face had changed the most, I think. My jawline was softer now, no longer sharp and angular. My cheekbones were higher, giving my face a more delicate shape. My lips were fuller, and my eyes, framed by naturally longer lashes, seemed bigger, more expressive. I leaned closer to the mirror, touching my face gently, as if I needed to confirm that it was real, that I was real. The transformation was complete. I was Alexis now, in every possible way. Despite the physical changes, the mental shift was still a work in progress. There were days when I felt confident, even beautiful. Days like today, where I could look in the mirror and feel a sense of pride in the person I was becoming. But there were also days when I felt like I was faking it. Days when I'd catch myself in a reflection and wonder if I was really supposed to be like this. If I was fooling myself. I pulled back from the mirror, letting out a slow breath. I was wearing a simple tank top and jeans, clothes that had been borrowed from my mom's closet, while I tried to figure out what my new style was. They fit me, but not perfectly. The jeans clung to my hips and thighs in a way that I wasn't used to, and the tank top stretched over my chest in a way that made me feel exposed. But I liked it in a strange way. I liked the way my body looked in them, even if it still felt a little new, a little raw. "How's it going in there?" My mom's voice floated in from the hallway, and I jumped slightly, breaking out of my reverie. Good," I called back, trying to sound casual. "I think I'm ready." She opened the door a crack, peeking in with a smile. "You look great, Alexis," she said, her eyes softening with pride. "You ready to go shopping?" I nodded, though the idea of shopping still made me a little nervous. It wasn't that I didn't want new clothes. I desperately did. It was just that the whole process felt so vulnerable. Shopping as Alex had been easy. I'd just grab a few t-shirts, a pair of sneakers, and call it a day. But now, everything was different. Now, clothes were about more than just covering my body. They were about expressing who I was, or at least, who I was trying to become. The mall was busier than I expected, and I could feel the nerves building in my stomach as we wandered through the various stores. My mom, ever the enthusiastic shopper, led the way, occasionally holding up a dress or a blouse with a thoughtful look. "What do you think of this one?" she asked, holding up a flowy floral dress that looked like something I'd never wear in a million years. I made a face. "I think I'd look like a walking garden in that." She laughed, shaking her head. "You'd be surprised. Sometimes the things you least expect end up looking the best." I shrugged, not entirely convinced. "I'll take your word for it." We moved on to the next store, and I found myself wandering over to a rack of jeans and tops. I ran my fingers over the fabric, feeling the soft denim and the light, airy cotton. My body had changed so much that I wasn't even sure what size I was anymore, which made the whole process feel like a guessing game. But as I picked out a few things to try on, I couldn't help but feel a little excited. Maybe this was the fun part, getting to reinvent myself, getting to choose how I wanted to present to the world. In the dressing room, I slipped into a pair of jeans that fit like a glove, hugging my hips and thighs in a way that made me feel sexy. I wasn't used to thinking of myself in those terms, but there it was. I turned in the mirror, studying the way the denim clung to my curves, the way it accentuated the shape of my legs. I paired it with a simple black top that dipped slightly at the neckline, showing just enough of my chest to make me feel feminine, but not too exposed. I stared at myself for a long moment, taking in the new image. This was me. This was Alexis. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was pretending. By the time we left the mall, I had a few bags of new clothes that actually felt like mine. It was a strange feeling, but a good one. I'd spent so long feeling like I was stuck between two worlds, between who I used to be and who I was becoming. And now, for the first time, it felt like I was starting to settle into this new identity. It wasn't perfect, and I knew there would still be moments of doubt, but I was beginning to understand that it was okay to feel that way. It was all part of the process. As we drove home, my mom glanced over at me with a smile. "You know," she said, her voice light, "I'm really proud of how far you've come." I blinked, caught off guard by her words. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this whole transformation. It's been a lot. For both of us. But you've handled it with so much grace. Even when you've been scared or unsure, you've kept moving forward. And that's something to be proud of." I felt a lump rise in my throat, and I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "Thanks, Mom," I said quietly. That means a lot." She smiled at me, her eyes shining with warmth. "You've always been strong, Alexis, even when you didn't know it." That night, after I'd hung up my new clothes and put everything away, I found myself standing in front of the mirror again. This time, though, I wasn't scrutinizing my reflection. I wasn't looking for flaws or trying to figure out how I fit into this new body. I was just looking. And for the first time, I felt a sense of peace. My body was fully transformed now. There were no more changes to wait for. No more surprises around the corner. I had the body of a young woman, curves, breasts, hips, and all. And while it had been a long, confusing journey to get here, I was starting to feel like I belonged in this skin. Like this was who I was supposed to be all along. I traced the outline of my face with my fingers, marveling at how much had changed. My cheekbones, my lips, my eyes, all of it was different, but it was still me. I wasn't Alex anymore, but that didn't mean I had lost who I was. I was still the same person, just more complete. And as I stood there, staring at my reflection, I realized something that I hadn't fully acknowledged before. I was happy. Not all the time, and not in a way that meant everything was perfect. But in this moment, I was happy with who I was becoming, and that was enough. Later that night, Jamie texted me. "Hey, how'd the shopping go?" I smiled, typing out a quick response. "Pretty good. Got some new stuff. You'll have to come over and see." There was a pause before his next message came through. "I'd like that. Maybe we can hang out tomorrow?" I hesitated for a moment, my heart fluttering in my chest. Things had been different between Jamie and me since our kiss. We hadn't talked about it much, but the tension between us was still there, unspoken but heavy. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready to face it. "Sounds good," I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. As I set my phone down and climbed into bed, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The transformation was complete. I was Alexis now, fully and completely. And while there were still things to figure out, still questions to answer, still moments of doubt to face, I knew that I was on the right path. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of the day wash over me, and drifted off to sleep with a smile on my face. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and maybe even new emotions. But whatever came, I was ready to face it, because I was Alexis. And I was finally starting to feel like myself. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, staring at my reflection like I was about to walk onto a stage for the first time. My heart was pounding, my stomach a twisted knot of nerves, and I could feel the perspiration gathering at the back of my neck. Today was the day. This was the first time I was going out in public, fully presenting as Alexis. No more hiding behind neutral clothing, or pretending that I still fit somewhere in between. Today, I would step out into the world as the woman I had become. I had picked out an outfit that felt both comfortable and like me, a pair of dark skinny jeans that hugged my hips just right, paired with a soft lavender blouse that skimmed over my chest and flared slightly at the waist. Feminine, but not too flashy. Simple, but undeniably different than anything I would have worn before. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just wanted to feel like myself. But as I stood there, taking in the reflection of this new person, I couldn't shake the anxiety bubbling up inside me. What if people stared? What if they could tell that I hadn't always been this way? What if someone said something cruel? I'd heard the horror stories, read about the harassment that so many people like me faced when they finally stepped out into the world. What if I wasn't ready? You are, I told myself, gripping the edge of the dresser. You've been ready for this. It's time. Now. Oh, I took a deep breath, trying to quiet the doubts. I reminded myself that this wasn't just about clothes or makeup or the way my body had changed. This was about me, about finally feeling like the person I was meant to be. It was about claiming my space in the world on my terms. And I wasn't doing it alone. As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the bed, and I glanced over to see Jamie's name flash on the screen. Hey, I'm outside. You ready? I smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. Jamie. Duh. He'd been my rock through all of this, even when I wasn't sure of anything myself. There had been awkward moments, sure. Moments where I wasn't sure what we were to each other anymore, if we were still just friends, or if we were something more. But through it all, he had been there, steady and supportive, in a way that I hadn't expected. I grabbed my bag, took one last look in the mirror, and headed for the door. The drive to the cafe was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Jamie glanced over at me a few times, offering a small smile but not saying much. He knew. I could tell that I was nervous. But instead of trying to fill the silence with empty words, he just let me be. It was one of the things I appreciated most about him. He never tried to push me, never made me feel like I had to explain myself. He just let me exist. As we pulled into the parking lot, I felt my heart start to race again. The cafe wasn't packed, but it wasn't empty either. There were groups of people sitting outside, chatting over coffee and pastries, and every single one of them suddenly felt like they were going to be watching me, judging me. Hey, Jamie, said softly, breaking into my thoughts. He reached over and gave my hand a light squeeze. You've got this. I glanced over at him, his dark eyes filled with quiet encouragement, and nodded. Yeah, I said, though my voice wavered slightly. I've got this. We got out of the car, and for a moment, I stood there by the passenger door, taking in the scene around me. The world felt different. Or maybe it was just me. Either way, I wasn't the same person I had been the last time I'd walked into this cafe. I wasn't Alex anymore, hiding in plain sight, trying to blend in. I was Alexis, and for the first time, I was about to step out into the world as her. I could do this. The bell above the cafe door jingled as we stepped inside, and I was acutely aware of every pair of eyes that turned in our direction. Were they looking at me? Could they tell? My heart pounded in my chest, and I forced myself to keep breathing, to keep walking. I could feel Jamie beside me, a solid, comforting presence, and that helped. But it didn't stop the wave of anxiety that washed over me as we made our way to the counter. The barista smiled at us. A young woman with short, brightly colored hair and a nose ring. "Hi there. What can I get for you?" I opened my mouth to speak, but for a second my voice caught in my throat. I swallowed hard, feeling the familiar panic rising. What if my voice didn't match the person she saw in front of her? What if it betrayed me? Before I could spiral further, Jamie jumped in. "Hey, can we get 2 iced lattes? One with oat milk, and the other with almond milk." The barista nodded, her smile never faltering. "Sure thing. Coming right up." As she turned to make our drinks, I exhaled, not even realizing I'd been holding my breath. Jamie glanced at me, his eyebrows raised in a silent question. "You okay?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was. But then something shifted. We waited for our drinks, and as I stood there I realized that no one was staring. No one had said anything. The world hadn't stopped spinning just because I was here, presenting as Alexis. Everything was normal. And that was the strangest part of all. When our drinks were ready, we took them over to a small table near the window. I sat down, still a little tense, but starting to relax. Outside, people walked by, chatting, laughing, living their lives. And none of them cared one bit about me. I wasn't some spectacle. I was just another person in the crowd. Jamie took a sip of his latte, studying me over the rim of his cup. "You're doing great," he said softly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I gave him a small smile. "Thanks. I'm getting there." He grinned. "You know, I always thought you'd make a pretty badass woman." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help the laugh that bubbled up. "Shut up. I'm serious," he said, leaning back in his chair with a teasing smirk. "I mean, look at you. You're killing it." I took a sip of my drink, trying to hide the way my cheeks flushed under his praise. "You're just saying that because you're my best friend." "Maybe." He shrugged. "But it doesn't mean it's not true." After the cafe, we wandered around the nearby shops, and with each passing minute, I found myself feeling more and more at ease. At first, every time someone walked past us, I'd tense up, waiting for the inevitable glance, the double take, the whispered comment. But it never came. Oh. People smiled, waved, went about their business, and I started to realize something important. No one was scrutinizing me the way I was scrutinizing myself. No one was dissecting every detail of my appearance, trying to figure out if I passed as female. They just saw me. And for the most part, they didn't care. We ducked into a small boutique, and I found myself browsing through racks of clothes, something I never would have done before. There were dresses, skirts, soft blouses, and jeans in every color and cut. For the first time, I felt like I had the freedom to choose something based on what I wanted to wear, not what I thought I should wear. I pulled a floral sundress off the rack, holding it up to my body, experimentally. It was light and flowy, the kind of thing I would have never imagined myself in a few months ago. I wasn't sure if I could pull it off, but I kind of wanted to try. Jamie appeared beside me, his eyes lighting up when he saw the dress. "That's cute," he said. "You should try it on." I hesitated. "I don't know. It's kind of girly." He raised an eyebrow. "And I bit my lip, glancing down at the dress again. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that." Jamie looked at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "You don't have to wear it if you're not comfortable. But if you want to, then why not? You're Alexis now. You get to decide what that means." I stared at him, his words sinking in. He was right. This was my choice. I wasn't trying to fit into anyone else's idea of who I should be. I was just me. Me. And maybe that meant I could wear a floral sundress if I wanted to. I smiled and nodded. Okay, I'll try it on. In the dressing room, I slipped into the dress, and for a moment, I just stared at myself in the mirror. The dress was soft, the fabric flowing around my legs, in a way that felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. It hugged my waist, accentuating the curve of my hips, and the neckline dipped just enough to show the soft swell of my chest. I turned slightly, watching the way the skirt twirled with me. It was pretty. I didn't feel awkward or out of place. I didn't feel like I was trying too hard. I just felt like a girl in a dress. And that was enough. When I stepped out of the dressing room, Jamie's eyes widened, and he let out a low whistle. Damn, Alexis. You look amazing. I blushed, but this time, I wasn't embarrassed. I felt good, you think? He nodded, grinning. Definitely. You should get it. I looked back at my reflection in the mirror, turning this way and that. The girl staring back at me wasn't a stranger anymore. She was me. And for the first time, I felt like I could really see her. I could see who I was becoming, who I wanted to be. Yeah, I said softly, smiling at my reflection. I think I will. That evening, after a day of small victories and growing confidence, Jamie and I decided to wind down with a movie at his place. It was a low-key tradition of ours, something we'd done countless times before. But tonight, the air between us felt charged in a way it hadn't before. Maybe it was because of the day we'd had. Or maybe it was the way Jamie had looked at me in the dress, like he was seeing me in a new light. We settled onto the couch, this time closer than usual. I snuggled up beside him, his arm naturally draping over my shoulders, pulling me into the warmth of his side. My head rested against his chest, and I could hear the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath my ear. It was comforting, familiar, and yet, something in me was stirring. The movie played on the screen, but I wasn't paying attention. All I could think about was the way Jamie's fingers traced small circles on my arm, the way our legs were pressed together, the way his body felt so solid and real beside mine. My pulse quickened, and I shifted slightly, turning my face up to look at him. Jamie's dark eyes met mine, and for a long moment neither of us moved. The tension between us was palpable, crackling in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Before I could think too much about it, Jamie's hand slid up from my shoulder to cup my cheek, his thumb brushing lightly over my skin. My breath hitched, and without a word, I leaned in, my lips meeting his in a kiss that was soft at first, tentative, but quickly deepened. It was like the floodgates had opened. The kiss grew more urgent, more intense. I shifted, turning my body toward him, pressing myself closer, as our lips moved together in a rhythm that felt both new and natural. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me tighter, and I went willingly. My hands slid up to his neck, fingers threading into his hair, tugging gently as the kiss deepened even further. Jamie's grip on me tightened, his hands now roaming over my back, then sliding down to my hips, pulling me fully into his lap. I could feel the hard lines of his body beneath mine, the heat radiating from his skin as our bodies pressed together. My heart raced as his lips moved from my mouth to my jaw, trailing soft, urgent kisses down my neck, making me gasp softly, my fingers digging into the back of his shirt. My body responded in ways I hadn't expected, heat pooling low in my belly, a sensation that was both thrilling and unfamiliar, yet something I craved more of. I shifted in his lap, my hips pressing down against him, and the friction sent a jolt of pleasure through me, making me gasp again, louder this time. Jamie groaned softly against my neck, his fingers gripping my waist more firmly as he held me even closer, his breath hot against my skin. Without thinking, I let myself fall back onto the couch, pulling Jamie down with me. He moved willingly, his body following mine as he settled over me, his lips finding mine again with more urgency, more need. I was lying beneath him now, our bodies entwined, his weight pressing into me in a way that made my pulse quicken and my breath come in shallow, rapid bursts. Every inch of me was aware of him, his warmth, his strength, the way his body seemed to fit perfectly against mine. His hand slid under the hem of my shirt, caressing the bare skin of my waist, and I arched into his touch, wanting more, needing more. I could feel him everywhere, the heat between us building with every kiss, every touch. The tension was electric, crackling, and I felt it building inside me, tightening in my chest and lower, deep in my belly, like a coiled spring ready to snap. I wasn't just kissing him anymore. I was losing myself in him, in the feel of his hands on my skin, the way his lips moved against mine, the way his body pressed into mine. My legs instinctively parted, allowing him to settle more fully between them, and when our hips aligned, I gasped, overwhelmed by the raw, unfamiliar need that surged through me. Without thinking, I wrapped my legs around him, pulling him closer, feeling the full length of his body against mine. The movement was instinctual, a primal need to be closer, to feel every part of him pressed against me. Jamie groaned again, a deeper sound this time, his hands sliding down to grip my hips as he pressed harder into me. I could feel the heat of him, the tension in his body matching the intensity in mine, and it made my heart race faster, my breath quicken. His lips left my mouth, trailing down my neck, across my collarbone, and every kiss sent a shiver of pleasure through me, making my back arch and my fingers tangle in his hair. My body felt alive, buzzing with sensation, with desire, and I wanted him closer, needed him closer. The ache in my belly grew stronger, more insistent, and I could feel the want pooling low inside me, an unfamiliar ache that made me press my hips up toward his, seeking more contact, more friction. "Jamie," I whispered, my voice barely audible as I tugged gently at his hair, pulling him closer, needing to feel his lips on mine again, needing to lose myself in him. My legs tightened around him, holding him close, almost as if I were afraid to let him go, afraid to lose the connection that was building between us. He paused for a moment, lifting his head to look down at me, his dark eyes clouded with desire, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he tried to catch his breath. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of what was happening settling between us. His hand brushed a strand of hair away from my face, his touch so gentle, so intimate, that my heart ached with it. "Alexis," he murmured, his voice rough, edged with the same need that was coursing through me. There was something in the way he said my name, something raw and vulnerable, and it made my chest tighten with emotion. I didn't respond with words. Instead, I pulled him back down, capturing his mouth with mine, the kiss fierce and urgent. His body pressed harder into mine, and I could feel the tension in him, the same tension that was building in me, threatening to spill over. My fingers traced down his back, feeling the heat of his skin through his shirt, and I arched up into him, desperate to feel more, to be closer. His hands roamed over my body, exploring, learning, and I let him. I wanted him to. I wanted to feel everything, to lose myself in this moment, in him. My body was alive with sensation, every nerve ending buzzing with anticipation, with desire. The ache inside me grew stronger, more insistent, a need that was both thrilling and terrifying. I didn't know where it was leading, but I didn't want it to stop. We broke apart for a brief moment, both of us panting, our foreheads resting together as we tried to catch our breath. Jamie's hands were still on my waist, his grip almost possessive, and I could feel the rapid rise and fall of his chest against mine, the heat of his body pressing into me. "Alexis," he murmured again, his breath warm against my lips, his voice thick with emotion. His forehead rested against mine as his fingers traced light patterns on my skin, his touch soothing the fire that had been burning just moments before. I didn't say anything, just leaned in and kissed him again, my lips crashing against his as the tension between us flared back to life. It was like we couldn't get enough of each other, like we'd been waiting for this moment for so long, and now that it was happening, we didn't want it to end. But eventually, it did. After what felt like an eternity, and no time at all, we pulled apart, both of us panting, our faces flushed and our bodies still tangled together. I stayed there beneath him for a long moment, my head resting against his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my chest. My legs were still wrapped loosely around him, neither of us in a hurry to break the contact. Neither of us said anything, but we didn't need to. The air between us had shifted, and we both knew it. Something had changed, something important, and there was no going back from it. Jamie walked me to the door, standing close, his hand lightly brushing mine as we said our goodbyes. "See you tomorrow?" he asked, his voice soft, but there was a hint of something more in the way he said it, as if tomorrow would be different. I smiled, feeling my cheeks warm again. "Yeah, tomorrow." As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, and I realized just how much had changed in the span of a single day. I wasn't the same person I'd been that morning, and maybe, just maybe, wanted in a way I hadn't expected. By the time I got home, the house was quiet, the warm glow of the kitchen light spilling into the hallway. I sighed, feeling the exhaustion of the day finally catching up with me. I was ready to sneak up to my room when a voice called out from the kitchen. "Have fun with your boyfriend?" My mother's voice rang out, teasing and playful. I froze mid-step, my heart jumping into my throat. "Boyfriend?" I turned to see her standing by the kitchen counter, a mug of tea in hand, her eyebrow raised in that knowing way only mothers can pull off. She was still in her robe, her hair slightly tousled, as if she'd been waiting up for me. I stammered, feeling my face grow warm, heat creeping up my neck. "Oh, honey, relax," she said, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "I'm just teasing. But you two have been spending a lot of time together." She took a sip of her tea, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "And you're practically glowing right now." I shifted awkwardly, trying to figure out how to respond. Was I really that obvious? Had I been glowing? "We're just friends," I managed to say, though even I wasn't entirely convinced of that anymore. "Right," she said, drawing out the word with a tone that suggested she didn't believe me for a second. "If you say so." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. "Seriously, Mom, it's not like that." She said, her teasing tone softening as she set her mug down. Then her expression shifted, becoming more serious, but still warm. "I'm glad you had a good time today, Alexis. You deserve it." That caught me off guard. I blinked, feeling a lump form in my throat. My mom and I hadn't talked much about everything I'd been going through, about my transition, about what it meant to step out into the world as myself. But in that moment, I could feel her support, her quiet understanding, and it meant more than I could put into words. "Thanks, Mom," I said softly, my voice thick with emotion. I met her eyes, and for just a moment, I saw a pride there, the love. It was unspoken, but it was enough. "Now, get some sleep," she said, her voice back to its teasing lilt. "You've got another big day ahead of you tomorrow, with or without your friend." I laughed, the tension breaking. "Good night, Mom." "Good night, sweetheart." That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the day in my mind, along with the steamy, unexpected intensity of the makeout session that had left me breathless and my heart racing. I couldn't stop thinking about the way Jamie had looked at me, the way he had touched me, the way I had felt in his arms. It had been exhilarating, terrifying, and exciting all at once. Today had been terrifying at first, stepping out into the world as Alexis for the first time. I had been so afraid of what people would think, of how they would react. But in the end, it hadn't been about them at all. It had been about me, about finding the confidence to be myself, to claim my place in the world without apology. I still had a long way to go. There would still be moments of doubt, moments where I felt insecure or unsure. But today had been a step in the right direction, a step towards acceptance, not just from the world around me, but from myself. I smiled, closing my eyes as I snuggled deeper into my blankets. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new experiences, and new opportunities to grow. But whatever came, I knew I could face it, because I was Alexis, and I was ready to take on the world. The sun was just beginning to set, casting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange as I sat on the porch swing, the gentle creak of the chains the only sound breaking the quiet evening. I pulled my knees up to my chest, letting the cool breeze brush against my skin, and closed my eyes, soaking in the moment. It was peaceful here, in this space between day and night, between the past and the future. It felt like the perfect place to stop and reflect on how far I'd come. Just a few months ago, sitting here like this, feeling like this, would have been unimaginable. Back then, I was still struggling, still caught in the whirlwind of change, trying to find my footing in a world that had suddenly shifted beneath me. I hadn't known who I was, or where I fit, or if I even could fit. But now, as I sat here in the fading light, I realized something that filled me with a quiet, steady sense of peace. I was home. Not just in this physical place, but in my body, in my identity. I was home in myself, and that was something I never thought I'd be able to say. The door behind me creaked open, and I glanced back to see Jamie stepping out onto the porch, a soft smile on his face. "Hey," he said, his voice low and warm, like it always was when it was just the two of us. "Mind if I join you?" I smiled, shifting over on the swing to make room for him. "Well, I'm Antonio." "Of course not." He slid in beside me, the swing rocking gently with the added weight, and for a moment we just sat there in comfortable silence, watching as the sun dipped lower and lower, painting the horizon in hues of gold and lavender. I glanced over at him, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the setting sun. Jamie had been by my side through all of this, through every step of my transformation. He had seen me at my most vulnerable, my most insecure. And yet, he had never once wavered. If anything, our relationship had grown stronger, deeper, until it had become something I never expected, but something I was so grateful for. It had started slowly, almost imperceptibly, a shift in the way we looked at each other, in the way we touched. At first I hadn't been sure what to make of it. After all, we had been best friends for years. Jamie had always been there, a constant presence in my life, someone I trusted more than anyone else. But somewhere along the way, that trust had turned into something more. I had started noticing the way my heart fluttered when he smiled at me, the way my skin tingled when his hand brushed against mine. And then there had been that kiss, that soft, tentative kiss that had changed everything. After that, there had been no going back. I still remembered the night we officially became something more. We had been sitting on the couch, watching some terrible action movie we had both seen 100 times. when Jamie had suddenly turned to me, his expression serious. "Alexis," he had said, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you." I had felt my heart skip a beat, my mind racing with possibilities. "What is it?" He had taken a deep breath, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach flip. "I've been in love with you for a while now. I didn't really understand it at first, but I do now. And I just needed you to know that." For a moment, I had been too stunned to speak. I had known that things between us were changing. But to hear him say it out loud, to hear him say he loved me, it had knocked the wind out of me. But then slowly, a smile had spread across my face, and I had reached out, taking his hand in mine. "I love you too, Jamie." And that had been it. Simple, honest, perfect. Now here we were, sitting on my porch, the sun setting on another day, and I felt more at peace than I ever had in my life. Jamie glanced over at me, his hand resting lightly on my knee, and smiled. "You're thinking about something," he said, his voice teasing. "I can see the wheels turning." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "I guess I'm just thinking about everything. How far I've come. How far we've come." "Huh?" He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's been a hell of a ride, hasn't it?" "Yeah," I agreed, leaning my head against his shoulder. "But I wouldn't change it for anything." We sat like that for a while, the two of us wrapped in the quiet comfort of each other's presence. I thought back to the beginning of it all, to the days when I had still been Alex, when I had still been trying to figure out what was happening to me, and why my body didn't feel like my own anymore. It had been terrifying, confusing, and overwhelming, but now looking back, I realized that every step of the journey had led me here, to this moment, to this person I had become. My body had changed so much over the past few months, but now those changes felt like a part of me, like they had always been there, waiting to emerge. My breasts had finally settled into their natural shape and size, full, round, and undeniably feminine. I no longer felt self-conscious about the way they looked or felt. Instead, I had grown to appreciate the way they fit my body, the way clothes hugged my curves in a way that felt right. My hips, too, had taken on a natural wideness that gave me the kind of hourglass figure I had always admired in other women. It had taken time to get used to the new way my body moved, to the sway of my hips when I walked, to the way my thighs brushed against each other when I wore certain outfits. But now it felt like second nature. This was my body, fully and completely, and I had finally learned to love it. Even my face had softened, the angles of my jaw giving way to a more delicate, feminine shape. My cheekbones were higher, my lips fuller, my eyes framed by thick lashes I hadn't had before. When I looked in the mirror now, I didn't see Alex anymore. I saw Alexis, a young woman who had fought hard to become who she was, and who had finally found peace in the process. Jamie's voice broke into my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. "So," he said, his tone light, "what's next for Alexis?" I smiled, leaning back against the swing and letting out a contented sigh. "I don't know," I admitted. "But for the first time, I'm excited to find out." He grinned, nudging me playfully with his shoulder. "You've come a long way, you know that." "Yeah," I said softly, my heart swelling with pride. "I guess I have." It was strange to think about how different my life had been, not so long ago. Back then I had been so afraid of the changes, of the unknown, of what the future would hold. But now, sitting here with Jamie beside me, I realized that I wasn't afraid anymore. I was excited. I was ready. I had spent so long fighting to become the person I was meant to be. And now, I was finally here. The future stretched out before me, wide and full of possibilities. I didn't know exactly what it would hold. No one ever really does. But I knew that whatever came next, I was ready for it. I had Jamie by my side. I had a newfound confidence in myself, and most importantly, I had finally found peace in being Alexis. That alone was more than I could have ever hoped for. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, I turned to Jamie, my heart full. "You know," I said softly, "I couldn't have done this without you." He looked at me, his expression serious for a moment. "You would have, eventually," he said. "But I'm glad I could be here for you. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. "I love you, Jamie." He grinned, leaning down to kiss me softly on the forehead. "I love you too, Alexis." The night settled in around us, the stars blinking to life, one by one, in the darkening sky. I closed my eyes, feeling the cool breeze brush against my skin, and let myself sink into the moment. This was it. This was the new beginning I had been waiting for. The start of a life where I could be fully, unapologetically myself. And for the first time, I was looking forward to the future with excitement, not fear. I didn't know exactly where life would take me from here, but I knew one thing for sure. I was ready for whatever came next, because I was Alexis, and my story was just beginning. The end.